At 31-year-old Rowan Baxter. Rowan Baxter was born on May 9, 1977, in Taranaki City, New Zealand. His childhood was described as chaotic, and his father went to prison when he was young for essay of a minor. It's been alleged, but not confirmed, that the minor was Rowan's sister. While not much is known about Rowan's history, one of his cousins stated that he was an angry child and had a history of showing cruelty to others. According to another cousin, she was terrified of Rowan, and his misogynist ways was a family trait that he inherited. Rowan played rugby at Taranaki Boys College and went on to be contracted to the New Zealand Warriors National Rugby League team in 2005. He was paid $10,000 a year, but he never played a game while part of the team. Rugby was a family sport, and his brother Charles played professionally for the Bay of Plenty Steamers for 5 years. Even though Rowan never actually played a game, he would always refer to himself as an ex-National Rugby League player, both in his future professions and also when he met people. Rowan's friends and co-workers didn't have the best things to say about him either. They described him as controlling and driven. He did not like to be told no. They said he always had to be the alpha male, and that he was very confrontational. Rowan was extremely competitive, including with his clients, and he always had to win. He would lie when it suited him. He made all decisions and ignored the advice of others. Rowan was suspicious in nature and always painted himself as the victim. He was short-tempered, and he was known to pretend to cry in order to garner sympathy from people. Only a couple of people had nice things to say about Rowan, that he was a loyal friend that would help out when needed, and that he was a good father to his kids. Rowan was married before he met Hannah and had a young son. Una's first wife met when he was 18, and she was 16. By the time their son was 2 years old, she wanted a divorce due to Rowan's controlling behavior and anger issues. However, Rowan wouldn't let her leave and took to stalking her. Rowan then told his estranged wife that he had a hose pipe in his car, and he had planned how he was going to end it for all three of them. Sadly, she decided to go back to this relationship. In 2008, Hannah was teaching at the PCYC in Carindale, a suburb of Brisbane, when Rowan's son attended her class. It was there that the two met, and even though he was still married, he began an affair with Hannah. At the time, Rowan had told Hannah that he and his wife had separated, but were living together for their son. About 4 months into the affair, he decided to break up with his wife. He moved out of the family home, agreeing to a co-parenting plan. However, Rowan would still get aggressive with his ex, threatening to beat her door down if there was a conflict in the parenting plan. Hannah became pregnant about 6 months into the relationship, and even though she wanted to keep the baby, Rowan convinced her to terminate it due to her young age. Over the next 4 years, Hannah and Rowan moved in together, moving a couple of times before settling in Mansfield. In October of 2012, Rowan and Hannah were married, and at the time, she was 14 weeks pregnant with their daughter. Rowan also stopped paying child support for his son after he had his first child with Hannah. Aaliyah Baxter was born on April 10, 2013. She was described as a sweet, articulate, clever girl who was excelling at school. She loved reading in English class. She was a brave girl who stood up to her father's violent behavior. She had seen the way that Rowan had treated her mother, and she didn't like it. In January of 2015, Hannah and Rowan, who were both very fitness-focused, decided to open a gym that they called Integrate Gym. Even though Hannah's parents and another investor paid to open the gym, it ultimately failed. Hannah's parents often paid their rent and bills to keep the family afloat. Around the same time that the gym opened, the couple had their second child, Leanna, and then 18 months later, their final child, Trey. Leanna Baxter was born on March 19, 2015, and was a sweet girl by nature. She was the peacekeeper who would try to make sure everyone was happy around her. She was described as a miniature version of her mother. If her father was angry, she would sit in his lap and try to calm him down. Trey Baxter was born on December 4, 2016, and was a mom's boy through and through. He loved running and playing, and loved nothing more than to be with his mother. Over time, Rowan's behavior with Hannah became progressively more controlling and aggressive. Early in the relationship, Hannah had gone on a cruise, and she expressed concern to her mother that Rowan wasn't happy with her going away. He contacted her excessively during this whole trip. Rowan then started to control what she wore, forbidding her to wear shorts, short skirts, or the color pink. Keep in mind, this is in Brisbane, Australia, where it is often hot. Therefore, wearing shorts and or skirts is not uncommon to do there. According to folks that we know in Australia, It is not uncommon to see people wearing much less than that in public, and it's not really frowned upon. So for someone to not be wearing shorts or skirts above the knees is somewhat unusual, especially those who work in the fitness industry. Rowan started to control other aspects of Hannah's life. They had a joint Facebook page, as Rowan didn't want her to have her own. Before opening their own gym, he got a job at the same place as Hannah, presumably to keep an eye on her. He started to isolate Hannah from her family, and this is a family that was very much tight-knit at one point. Rowan not only criticized Hannah's family, he would also control the amount of time that Hannah and the kids could visit. His criticism and controlling behavior didn't stop with Hannah either. If the kids didn't clean their toys up quickly enough, he would throw the toys in the trash. He would often cancel events the kids were looking forward to in order to punish Hannah. Allegedly, Rowan also planted devices in the house and inside Hannah's car so that he could record and listen to what she was saying. This was never proven, however, and in one instance, he overheard a conversation that happened in their car between Hannah and an employee at the gym. The employee criticized Rowan for taking over a gym class that Hannah was running. Rowan was enraged at this conversation. He claimed Aaliyah had been playing with the phone and accidentally called him, so he overheard the conversation. But while this is possible, it wasn't the only time this happened. After an argument, Rowan left the house with the kids, and Hannah, who was upset, called her mother. Rowan later knew every word that was said in that conversation and held it against Hannah. He told a coworker that it was an accident and that he left the phone on record after the coworker told him he shouldn't be recording Hannah without her knowledge. While it's unknown exactly how much physical violence happened in the house, a few friends and family reported seeing bruises on Hannah. At one point, she had a fingerprint bruise on her arm after an argument. Hannah wanted to take Aaliyah with her to a fitness competition, and Rowan disagreed. After going through Hannah's phone one evening, he threw it across the room and smashed it after he didn't like what he saw. Rowan would also demand that Hannah sleep with him on a daily basis. If Hannah didn't comply, he would start an argument. Now, on one occasion, he smashed her watch in anger and then left the house and took the same hose that he threatened his ex-wife with. A terrified Hannah called her mother. Worried he was going to shove the hose in his exhaust, Hannah's parents drove around Brisbane looking for him. He later came home and said he had driven to a church parking lot and attempted to do so. Eventually, Hannah had enough, and in November of 2019, she reached out to a family violence resource center and told them she wanted to leave her husband, but she didn't know how to do it safely. Now, as we mentioned previously, she believed Rowan was monitoring her. Together, they made an exit plan. In December of 2019, Hannah put the plan into action, fleeing her home with little possessions. She picked up Aaliyah from school and fled to her best friend's house. She left her phone in the car, which they hid in case Rowan was tracking them. The next day, they went to her parents' house. On December 4th, Rowan contacted Relationships Australia. According to their website, Relationships Australia is a leading provider of relationship support services for individuals, families, and communities. They aim to support all people in Australia to achieve positive and respectful relationships. The organization offered Rowan a session on December 10th, but he never confirmed or attended this appointment. On December 14th, Rowan went to his doctor and told him that Hannah and the kids had moved out. He confessed that he had control issues which were getting worse. He was in tears and indicated that he regretted his behavior. Rowan mentioned he had a bad upbringing but was close to his mother, and that he had cut a lot of people out of his life. He went back on the 16th for a mental health visit and was prescribed temazepam, but no further follow-up was ever done, and this was the last contact he had with his doctor. According to a clinical pharmacist we consulted, temazepam is normally prescribed for insomnia. Now, Rowan presented with anxiety, and it's quite possible he was dealing with insomnia at the same time, so theoretically possible he was prescribed temazepam because of this. Now on December 6th, Hannah went to the police, and there she was advised to serve Rowan with a DVO. However, she was scared this would aggravate him and escalate the behavior. A DVO is an order which prohibits people from committing family violence against one another, much like a protection order here in the United States. Unfortunately, Hannah continued to contact Rowan so that he could see the kids. He would consistently tell her to think of the children and of the alleged harm she was causing them due to her leaving the relationship. He also started to tell Hannah's parents that their daughter was mentally ill and that he had done nothing wrong whatsoever. This started off a constant back and forth where Rowan would claim that he would return the children, but then change his mind sent Hannah into a frenzy trying to get her children back, and much like with this previous marriage, he would show up unannounced, let himself into his in-laws' home, and stalk and harass Hannah. On December 26, 2019, Rowan had the children for the day, and Hannah went to pick them up. Now instead of handing the kids over, Rowan threw Leanna in the front seat of his car and drove off. A witness saw this and flagged down a passing police car, who then talked to Hannah. Unfortunately, as there were no family court orders in place, all the police could do was ask Rowan to return his daughter, but they couldn't take her from him. The police did try to contact Rowan and went to his house, but nobody was home. Later that evening, Rowan called Hannah on FaceTime and told her that unless she ended an affair that he claimed she was having, and he would not return Leanna. Hannah wasn't even having an affair. This was just another tactic Rowan was using to control her. Hannah contacted her lawyers, who drafted a letter to Rowan demanding the return of Leanna. The police decided that they were going to file a DVO on Hannah's behalf regardless of her intention to do so. On December 28th, the police protection order was filed. On December 29th, the police made contact with Rowan at his house as he was putting Leanna in the car. They advised him of the court order and told him he couldn't go within 100 meters of Hannah or the children until they could be heard in the court for permanent orders. The police then took Leanna into custody and returned her to Hannah. Rowan was to have no contact before January 4th, 2020, and they were all due in court. Later, the police conducted a welfare check and noted that Leanna appeared scared. After what was essentially a kidnapping, she always kept her mother within her sights. Hannah was recommended to take the children to child-aware psychology for services, but no records were ever found that the children had attended. In support of the police issuing a DVO, Hannah provided a statement about some of the things that had been going on behind closed doors. These included that she was forced to sleep with Rowan every night even though he would tell her she was disgusting, and that sleeping with her was, and I'm quoting him, like having sex with a bucket. In Hannah's own words, if I didn't have sex with him every night, he would make our lives hell. In the end, it became a chore I had to do to keep the peace and keep our kids safe from his temper. She also stated that he would hold her neck even though this made her uncomfortable, but wouldn't squeeze enough to cut off her oxygen. On one particular occasion when Hannah told Rowan no, he attempted to assault her, and Hannah had to fight him off physically. It was stated that Rowan had told her he had a plan to end the existence of his ex-wife, their son, and then himself. This made Hannah fearful that he would attempt to do the same to her and their children. Also, Hannah said that she was scared of Rowan as he behaved in a way that made her fear for her children. Rowan had posted videos to social media in the past of him playing too roughly with the kids, and in some cases being outright violent. In one video, he puts the kids in an ice bath. Little Trey was crying hysterically the whole time. Rowan also contacted the police around the same time, claiming that he was the one in fear of Hannah. He said Hannah had a key to the house and was able to let herself in. He worried that she would come in and take Leanna, who he had in his care at the time. He said that he was so scared he was driving around in the car with his daughter. Given the size difference between both of them and history of their relationship, one could assume he was trying to counter any claims that Hannah herself was trying to make. On December 29, 2019, Rowan attended his first counseling session as part of his mental health plan. According to the session notes, Rowan reported wanting help controlling his jealousy and that Hannah had left him for his controlling behavior. No formal risk assessment or risk screening for family violence was completed, and the session focused on dealing with overwhelming feelings by using techniques such as breathing. The psychologist also provided him with pamphlets on how to be supportive of each other and how to hold a relationship meeting to sort out problems logically. His mental health assessment indicated he was feeling moderately depressed and anxious, but answered no to all questions regarding harming himself or others. On December 30th, DV Connect attempted to contact Rowan twice by phone and text following a referral from the Queensland Police. They tried the next day, but were unable to establish contact. On the 31st, Rowan again attended his counseling session and disclosed that he had a protection order against him. He claimed that Hannah had made it all up and that he was upset that he wasn't able to see his children. Session notes state that they discussed the hardship of not seeing his kids, but again, no risk assessment was done. On January 1st, a child harm referral was raised within the police system to the Child Protection Investigation Unit. These are raised when there is potential for harm to come to a child resulting from a domestic incident attended to by the police. If an officer who has visited an incident is concerned about the welfare of a child, they will raise a referral to be investigated by the Specialized Child Protection Unit. Once this unit completes an investigation, they can also raise the matter to the docks, which is Australia's version of CPS. This referral, however, was closed by Detective Sergeant Derek Harris as a custody dispute, and no further investigation was necessary. He did, however, send a copy of the report to docks. On January 6th, Rowan again attended counseling and reported that their gym had been closed and that Hannah was oversharing their business, making people avoid him. He said he wanted 50-50 custody. Again, no risk assessment was done and strategies, such as starting new activities, were discussed to help Rowan. The matter went to court on January 8th, and Rowan contested the DVO. In the end, the DVO ruled in favor of Hannah and stated that Rowan could not commit acts of family violence, expose the children to family violence, go within 100 meters of Hannah's residence, or contact Hannah unless it was regarding the children. On January 17th, Rowan sought out advice from the men's legal service. He told them he believed that Hannah was planning to run off with the children and that he would never see them again. At the same time, Rowan increased his stalking. He would be at the same coffee shop as her, the same shopping centers. He would follow Hannah around, and he kept appearing wherever she went. Hannah was worried that he had planted another tracking device on her. January 21st, Rowan attended another counseling session. He claimed that he was being accused of being mentally unstable in order to restrict his access to the children. His psychologist, Vivian Jarrett, wrote Rowan a letter that stated the following, and I quote, "Mr. Baxter has been stressed over his wife leaving him suddenly, but has been coping remarkably well considering. He has been very open and sincere in our sessions. I have no concerns regarding his mental health. Contact with his children would be ideal, and after reviewing his parenting strategies, all seems in order for him to regain contact." It appeared this letter was written solely on what Rowan was saying. No official risk assessment or screening was ever done by the psychologist in relation to family violence or risk to children in order to write this letter of support. A letter that would turn out to be so completely wrong. Rowan presented the biggest risk of all to Hannah and his children. Rowan, however, continued to fight the DVO. His lawyer sent a letter to the court claiming that Hannah had only filed the DVO in order to get Leanna back and retain custody of the children. On January 23rd, the court declared that Hannah was to retain custody of the children, and Rowan would get alternating weekends with them. Every other week, they would spend Thursday to Friday with Rowan. They would have shared holidays, weekly FaceTime calls, and changeover was to occur at Hannah's parents' home. Unfortunately, all of this was taking its toll on the kids, and they repeatedly stated that they did not want to see Rowan, especially Aaliyah. On one overnight visit, Aaliyah called Hannah crying. She said they were driving, and she didn't know where they were going. On January 31st, 2019, Rowan returned Trey later than the agreed custody time. While Hannah was getting Trey out of the car, she noticed that Rowan had explicit photos of her laying out in the open. Hannah grabbed the photos and went to walk inside, but Rowan got out of the car and grabbed her wrist, turning it up behind her, and his mother called the police. However, Rowan denied the assault and went to file a DVO against Hannah instead. Hannah, however, had seen a doctor who advised her wrist had been sprained and put it in a splint. Hannah reported the breach of the DVO to the police. When the police tried to talk to Rowan, he refused to speak without legal counsel. Around the same time, Rowan lost his job as a personal trainer at a local gym. Hannah's lawyers also advised Rowan's lawyers that due to this incident, Hannah would not be following the parenting plan and Rowan would not be seeing children any longer. Rowan was starting to unravel. He viewed everything as Hannah's fault in an attack on himself. He lacked insight into his behavior. His friends started to worry that he would make good on his threats to exit this world by his own means. The breach of the DVO finally caught up to him, but the police decided that rather than to take him into custody, they would issue him a notice to appear. He was also given notice for common assault for hurting Hannah's wrist. On February 7th, Rowan called Hannah's brother's ex-wife and stated he was so angry he wanted to kick her in the head. He wanted to go over, kick the door down, and smash her head in. On February 17th, Rowan went to a local hardware store and purchased zip ties, a jerrycan for fuel, and denatured alcohol. The following day, Rowan filled the jerrycan with 4.6 liters of fuel. He purchased 3 Kinder Surprise eggs and some lollipops. At 3:28 p.m. the same day, he phoned Youth and Family Services and inquired about a men's support program. At 4 p.m., he then phoned the men's line to inquire about the same program. At 6:25 p.m., he called a friend in tears saying he couldn't see the kids due to the DVO breach, and that everything Hannah is doing is working. That night, Rowan FaceTimed his children, but he didn't say anything. He just cried on the call. Hannah was worried for her own safety, even telling her mother that she needed to make a will because when Rowan killed her, he would go to prison and someone needed to care for the children. At one point, she told a friend at the gym she was worried Rowan would hurt the kids in order to hurt her. Sadly, she was right in both instances. On February 19, 2020, Hannah's mother Sue went to the gym and arrived home at 6:20 a.m. Hannah then went out and got coffee for herself and her mother and sat on her mother's bed drinking it while Sue got ready for work. The girls were playing in their bedroom, and Trey was watching a dinosaur show on the television. At 7:20 a.m., Sue kissed her daughter and grandchildren goodbye for what would turn out to be the final time. Hannah loaded up the kids in her car to drop Aaliyah and Liana off at school. Trey was in his car seat in the middle, Aaliyah was behind the driver's seat, and Liana was behind the passenger seat. As Hannah started the car, Rowan jumped into the passenger side, holding a jerry can full of fuel, and told her to start driving. Hannah screamed at him to get out of the car. She drove but pulled up beside a man named Michael Zemek, who was in his driveway washing his car. She screamed to him, called the police, "He's going to kill me, he's poured petrol on me." Michael looked over and saw Rowan in the front seat, physically holding Hannah to prevent her from getting out of the car. She's trying to get free, and Michael noted that Rowan was calm and seemed to be in control of himself. Hannah managed to break free from Rowan and got out of the car, but by that time, Rowan had already set her ablaze. She was engulfed in flames. Michael told her to roll on the ground. He used his hose to douse the flames. He then extinguished the flames on Rowan, and after hearing Hannah scream something about the children, he raced into his house to call emergency services. Michael returned to the scene to assist, and was later admitted to hospital for burns to his face, eye, and arm which he obtained helping Hannah out of the car. While Michael was in the house, another bystander named Samantha Covey saw flames and drove towards them. Seeing Hannah on the side of the road, she picked up the hose and continued to put the fire out. Samantha sat with Hannah until emergency services arrived. She said that Hannah asked repeatedly about her children, asking if someone had gotten them out of the car and whether they were okay or not. Hannah told Samantha that she pulled the car up upon seeing Michael. Rowan dropped the lighter, setting her on fire. She said she had tried to stop him and again asked about her babies in the car. Another neighbor named Carrie Fernandez heard Hannah's cries to call police, and after seeing the scene, she also called emergency services. She was on the phone with dispatchers when the car exploded into flames. With the fire extinguisher in hand, Carrie raced to the car and attempted to put out the fire. The vehicle began to roll backwards, and as people called for her to watch out, Hannah stood up and screamed, "My kids." A man named Benjamin Young pulled up just as Hannah made her initial scream. He also saw the car explode. He stated, "At that point, it sounded like a bomb went off. It was so loud. I felt the shockwaves." The car was engulfed in flames. Almost instantly, the car exploded about 10 meters from where I was. Police would later learn that Rowan had put the jerry can full of fuel right in front of Aaliyah, and it exploded right at her feet. While Rowan didn't have any fuel on him, each of the children did, as did Hannah. As the car rolled backwards, Benjamin noticed Rowan dive into the front passenger seat, grab something, and then jump back out again. Benjamin grabbed some wood from the back of his own car to try to stop the car from rolling backwards. As he ran towards the car, he heard other bystanders yelling, get them out," referring to the children. Benjamin saw little Trey in his car seat. Sadly, the intensity of the fire meant they couldn't get close enough to the vehicle to rescue any of the children. Reese Gorley, another stranger trying to save the family, noticed that when Rowan dove into the car, he had grabbed a knife. He yelled a warning to Carrie Fernandez, who was still trying to use the fire extinguisher on the car to back away from the now-armed Rowan. Rowan then made one final cowardly act. Kneeling on the ground, he put the tip of the knife towards his body and fell forward onto it. He then curled up into a fetal position and died shortly thereafter. The damage was already done. In one short, heartbreaking morning, Rowan had killed Aaliyah, Liana, and Trey, and left Hannah burned all over her entire body, fighting for her life. Hannah had third-degree burns to 97% of her body. She kept asking about her children. Were they okay? Did someone get them out of the car? Knowing how dire her situation was, They redirected her and said she needed to focus on herself for now. Hannah called her dad before she succumbed to unconsciousness. As he picked up the phone, he couldn't hear anyone on the other end. He assumed it was a pocket dial or one of the kids playing with the phone. He would soon learn that it was in fact Hannah. She was unable to speak. He said her last act of resistance was to reach out for her dad, but she couldn't talk to me. Hannah died at 4:50 p.m. later that day. She was the last in the family to die. Post his death, a chilling note was found on Rowan's phone. It read, "I'm finishing your game. I don't want to play it anymore. You can't have **** with someone's life like this and expect them to take it. I have told the kids that you love them. They will miss you, I'm sure." At autopsy, it was found that Hannah died from multi-organ failure due to the fire. Aaliyah, who was only 6 years old at the time of her death, died from the effects of the fire, including smoke inhalation. She had severe burns to 100% of her body. While she had toxic levels of carbon monoxide in her blood, it is believed that that was not the cause of her death. This means Aaliyah knew what was happening and was burned alive. Liana, who was 4 years old at the time of her death, died from the effects of the fire, including direct thermal effects, the effects of smoke inhalation, and other combustion effects. Little Trey, only 2 years old, also died from the effects of the fire, including direct thermal effects, and the effects of smoke inhalation and other combustion effects. Rowan, who died from a stab wound to the heart, had no alcohol or other substances in his system at the time of his death. He also was not suffering from any disease or injury to his brain. The aftermath of this horrific crime impacted the whole of Australia in many ways. Coercive control, defined by the Queensland Police as any adult to use violent or controlling behaviors towards their current or former intimate partner, family member, or unpaid carer with the intention to control or coerce them, was not well discussed within the community. Many people didn't realize it was a form of family violence, and as of May 26, 2025, it will be illegal in Queensland to use coercive control over someone. Before this tragic story, while family violence was well known, the misconception that it had to be only physical violence existed. Other forms of family violence exist, and can be just as deadly as physical violence. After the tragic events of February 19, 2020, Hannah's parents started a foundation called Small Steps for Hannah, whose mission, in their own words, is in their quest to honor Hannah, Aaliyah, Lena, and Trey, and ensure that no family should endure this pain again. The Clark family have started a movement for change, Small Steps for Hannah, but a halt to the incidences and severity of domestic and family violence in Australia. HALT stands for Hannah, Aaliyah, Lena, and Trey. At an inquest into whether more could have been done to prevent these tragic events, the magistrate found Rowan Baxter was not mentally ill. He was a further actions taken by police officers, service providers, friends, or family members could have stopped Baxter from ultimately executing his murderous plans. Baxter made numerous appointments for counseling and with doctors. All of these actions were designed to assist him to contest the DVO and get what he wanted from the family court process. He did not have any real wish to obtain counseling or address his problems. He manipulated doctors and psychologists. When Baxter concluded that he had totally lost control over Hannah, he killed her and her 3 children. Hannah, Aaliyah, Lena, and Trey were laid to rest on March 9, 2020. They were buried together in one coffin. Hannah's uncle said the following words. He said, "For many of us, it felt like we had been shrouded in a shroud of darkness. It is only when we embrace this darkness that we can see the brightness of the stars shine through." That is what Hannah, Aaliyah, Lena, and Trey are. Lights shining through their generation. Hannah's family remember her by the words of one of her last posts made to Facebook before her death. It read, "I am a strong woman. I don't sit around feeling sorry for myself, nor will I ever let anyone mistreat me again. I don't respond to people trying to dictate to me or bring me down. I am a survivor and not a victim. I am in control of my life, and there is nothing I can't achieve. My girls will grow up to be strong women who understand their worth." Hannah's brother had these words for the family he had lost. He said that Hannah was an amazing sister who was also his best friend. He said of his sister, was one of the greatest moms to walk the earth. Brown hair and brown eyes after you were born. Dad heard Brown Eyed Girl by Van Morrison on the radio on the way home, and forever this would be his song for you. He described his nieces and nephew as beautiful children who reflected their mom. He said, "Aaliyah, you were everything a big sister should be. Brave, strong, and quite bossy. Liana, you were the rat bag, the little middle. There was so much of Hannah in you. You were beautiful, sweet, and caring with an amazing imagination. You were the sweetest kid and a beautiful mermaid. Trey, mother's little man, and her best surprise. He heartbreakingly finished with, I am so sorry I couldn't protect you. Case 2. Columbia, the largest city and beating heart of South Carolina, USA, is steeped in a rich history. Established as the state capital in 1786, it evolved into a vital hub for commerce and transportation. Yet, during the American Civil War, Columbia endured devastating destruction before rising from the ashes as a modern metropolis. The prestigious University of South Carolina calls this city home, and it was here, in this very place, that the tragedy of a young student named Samantha unfolded. Samantha Josephson, a senior at the University of South Carolina, was on the cusp of graduation, her future brimming with promise. She had her sights set on pursuing a master's degree in law, dreaming of becoming a brilliant attorney. Born on August 13, 1997, in Princeton, New Jersey, Samantha grew up in an intellectual family where both parents were highly educated. She had an older sister, 2 years her senior, and the family lived in harmony, filled with joy. From a young age, Samantha was a lively, mischievous girl, often playing pranks that filled her home with laughter. Friends and family adored her for her cheerful demeanor, always radiating positivity. Academically, she excelled, becoming a source of pride for her teachers and loved ones. After graduating from Robbinsville High School, she was easily accepted into the University of South Carolina, where she majored in political science. Throughout her college years, Samantha was a vibrant student, excelling not only in her studies but also in extracurricular activities. She was a member of the Alpha Gamma Delta sorority, an organization that promotes leadership, academic excellence, and social responsibility among women. Beyond that, she participated in a student exchange program in Barcelona, seizing the chance to explore the world. During her travels, she witnessed injustices firsthand, fueling her determination to study law with the hope of defending justice. Samantha aspired to become a human rights lawyer like Amal Clooney, the renowned British attorney known for her work in human rights and international cases. In her sophomore year, Samantha met Greg, a student 1 year ahead of her, at a bar. They quickly grew close and started dating. When Greg graduated in 2018, he chose not to continue his studies and instead returned to his hometown of Mount Pleasant, 2 hours' drive from Columbia, to start working. Despite the distance, they maintained a tight-knit relationship through regular video calls and weekend meetups. In 2019, with just 2 months until her graduation, Samantha received exciting news. She had been accepted into Rutgers University's prestigious master's program in law with a partial scholarship. Less than 10 minutes later, she received another acceptance, this time from Drexel University, offering a full scholarship. After careful consideration, Samantha chose Drexel to ease the financial burden on her family. Her boyfriend, Greg, supported her decision and planned to find a job in Philadelphia so they could be closer. Everything seemed perfect. Samantha had love, a bright career, and a world of possibilities ahead. But no one could have predicted that, in one fateful night, it would all come crashing down. On March 28, 2019, Samantha and her friends headed to 5 Points, a lively area less than a mile from campus, to unwind. Known for its bustling bars and nightclubs, 5 Points was a popular spot for students. Samantha and her group gathered at the Bird Dog Bar. By around 2 a.m., exhausted from the night, Samantha decided to head home early. But little did anyone know, the moment she stepped out of that bar would be the last time she was seen alive. Samantha's phone went silent. No calls, no texts, no response. Her friends, boyfriend, and family began to panic. They scoured the area in search of her, but to no avail. By 1:30 p.m., they decided to report her missing to the police. Although Samantha had been missing for less than 24 hours, the police sprang into action immediately. They rushed to her apartment to interview her roommate, gathering details about her appearance, the clothes she was wearing when she disappeared, and swiftly released her photo to the media in hopes of receiving tips from the public. But no one could have imagined the horror Samantha had endured. The area where Samantha vanished was bustling with plenty of foot traffic. Surely someone must have noticed her movements. Indeed, at 4 p.m., the police received a critical lead. In the New Zion area of Clarendon County, southeast of Columbia, about 60 miles from the bar where Samantha was last seen, two hunters discovered the lifeless body of a young woman lying by the roadside, hidden among the brush. Police rushed to the scene and confirmed it was Samantha, the very person they had been desperately searching for. According to the preliminary forensic examination, her body bore countless small but shallow wounds inflicted by a sharp object. The injuries were concentrated primarily on her head, neck, arms, and back, with an estimated 120 stab wounds. The sheer number of wounds was so staggering that the coroner couldn't count them all, a testament to the killer's ferocity and utter lack of humanity. Even more horrifying, the coroner discovered that the murder weapon wasn't a typical knife, but something with a unique design, resembling two parallel blades. The wounds on Samantha's body were symmetrically distributed, leaving even the experts baffled about the exact nature of the weapon. The most shocking detail of all, Samantha's body was nearly drained of blood. Based on her body weight, she should have had roughly 4,000 milliliters of blood, but the coroner recovered only 20 milliliters. This meant almost all of her blood had been drained. The minuscule amount left wasn't even enough for further testing. The cause of death was determined to be acute blood loss, a process that likely took 10 to 20 minutes. During that time, Samantha must have endured unimaginable pain and despair. The mere thought of it is enough to send chills down anyone's spine. When Samantha's parents and boyfriend received the devastating news, they were utterly shattered. They couldn't fathom that a vibrant, radiant young woman like Samantha could meet such a tragic end. The University of South Carolina, where Samantha studied, was plunged into mourning. In the wake of the tragedy, fear gripped the entire student body. After all, what Samantha did on that fateful night was nothing out of the ordinary for a college student, hanging out with friends, ordering a ride through an app. These everyday actions meant that anyone could become a victim just like her. Panic spread through the student community. No one dared to visit bars or use ride-hailing apps so casually anymore. For the police, the pressure was immense. If they didn't catch the killer quickly, every student in the area would continue living in danger. Determined to crack the case, they mobilized a large task force to investigate. The police decided to start with the most critical lead, pinpointing the last time and place Samantha was seen alive. On the night of March 28th, Samantha's friends who had been drinking with her recounted the events. That evening, we were chatting and drinking at the bar. Samantha wasn't in the best mood, but she seemed fairly normal. Around 2 a.m. on the 29th, she said she wanted to head home to sleep and left before us. Samantha's boyfriend, Greg, also provided his statement. That day, my girlfriend and I were texting. Her parents were unwell, so she wasn't in high spirits. We messaged until 2:04 a.m., when she told me she had booked an Uber and the car was on its way. That was the last message I received from her. After that, she stopped responding. Greg explained that since they shared their locations with each other, he checked his phone and noticed something unusual about Samantha's route. The car should have been heading north to take her home, but instead, it was moving southeast. Sensing something was wrong, Greg called and texted her repeatedly but couldn't reach her. Even more bizarre, her location sharing suddenly turned off, an occurrence that had never happened before. At first, Greg didn't immediately alert the police, thinking Samantha might be tied up with something personal. But when morning came and he still couldn't contact her, he raced to Columbia to search for her. In fact, before reporting to the police, Greg had gone to Samantha's roommate to search together. He even managed to obtain surveillance footage, showing Samantha hailing a ride that night. After noticing something suspicious, he decided to alert the authorities. Based on this lead, the police quickly pinpointed a critical detail. Samantha had disappeared after booking an Uber. This meant the Uber driver could very well be a suspect. The police promptly contacted Uber and identified the driver who had accepted Samantha's ride, a man named Marcus. When questioned, Marcus admitted he had indeed accepted Samantha's booking, but claimed he never met her that night. He waited for a while, and when no one showed up, he canceled the ride. This raised the police's suspicions. Could Samantha have gotten into the wrong car? Following this lead, they reviewed footage from roadside surveillance cameras. At just past 2 a.m. on March 29th, Samantha was standing alone on a street corner, waiting for her ride. She was wearing an orange-red top, black jeans, and holding her phone. Though it was late, the area was still bustling with young people hanging out. No one appeared to be following or approaching her. Samantha stood calmly at the pickup spot, with nothing seeming out of the ordinary. A silver-gray car pulled up near Samantha, and she quickly approached it, assuming it was her ride, but the car sped off. It clearly wasn't the one she had booked. Samantha returned to her spot to continue waiting. About 30 seconds later, at 2:12 a.m., a black Chevrolet pulled up. This time, Samantha walked over and got into the car without hesitation. Moments later, the vehicle vanished into the night. As the police dug deeper into surrounding security footage, they uncovered a chilling detail. The black Chevrolet had been circling the area multiple times. Each time, it would stop at the street corner, where people were waiting for rides, linger for a few minutes, then drive off. This behavior resembled a predator hunting for prey. Those leaving the bars were the targets of this car. Earlier, the moment Samantha approached the wrong car had been clearly observed by the driver of the Chevrolet trailing behind. This suggested the crime was premeditated, meticulously planned in advance. The police immediately expanded their investigation to track down the Chevrolet. Unfortunately, the cameras didn't capture a clear view of the license plate or the driver's appearance. At this point, the police had only a sliver of information. The suspect drove a black Chevrolet and frequently appeared in the 5 Points area. With such limited leads, they had no choice but to intensify patrols and keep an eye on every black Chevrolet in the vicinity. Typically, when hunted so relentlessly, a suspect would go into hiding, but not this time. Less than a day later, the police apprehended the suspect. Rather than crediting the police's efficiency, it might be more accurate to say the suspect was overly confident and arrogant, completely disregarding the law. While patrolling 5 Points, officers spotted a black Chevrolet matching the one from the surveillance footage. Without hesitation, they pulled the car over for inspection. A man wearing a white hoodie, seated inside, was asked to step out. But the moment he exited the vehicle, he suddenly turned and fled. At the time, there was still a female passenger in the car. When questioned, she appeared utterly bewildered, unsure of what was happening. Meanwhile, several officers quickly gave chase to the suspect. In a matter of moments, they apprehended him. His decision to flee before even being questioned suggested he had something to hide. However, even after being caught, the suspect remained silent in the face of the police's questions. He only claimed to be struggling to breathe and demanded medical attention. When a doctor arrived to examine him, they concluded he was perfectly healthy. To identify the suspect, the police took his photograph and fingerprints. The results revealed he was Nathaniel Rowland, 24 years old. Meanwhile, another team of officers conducted a preliminary search of the car. They discovered a quantity of illegal substances, a rose gold iPhone, visible bloodstains on the back seat, and cleaning agents like bleach. It was highly likely that this car was the crime scene. Investigators swiftly arrived to collect evidence from the vehicle, as well as from Nathaniel's body and clothing. Realizing he couldn't conceal the blood in the car, Nathaniel concocted a far-fetched story. He claimed that on March 28th, he attended a family gathering, drank too much, and stayed overnight at a hotel. The next morning, when he returned to his car, he found it covered in blood. He then bought cleaning agents to scrub it down. Nathaniel insisted someone else had borrowed his car, and he had no idea what had happened. He spoke fluently, but when the police pressed him on who had borrowed the car and who attended the gathering, he clammed up, refusing to answer, citing privacy concerns. His statement was clearly a poorly staged act. The police continued their thorough search of the car and uncovered even more damning evidence. First, the back seat had the child safety lock engaged, preventing anyone in the rear from opening the doors from the inside. Second, there was a footprint on the window, as if someone had tried to kick the glass out, but failed. Third, inside the car, they found a shopping list that included items like duct tape, gloves, gasoline, and a phone, suggesting a plan to dispose of evidence. Additionally, the police discovered an eviction notice for a woman named Maria. On March 26th, Nathaniel had submitted a bail application on her behalf. After verification, the police confirmed that Maria was Nathaniel's current girlfriend. Meanwhile, despite the car having been cleaned, the police used luminol and discovered that the back seat was almost entirely saturated with blood. A seasoned investigator with 25 years of experience remarked that this was the most gruesome crime scene he had ever encountered. Particularly striking was the fact that the blood in Samantha's body had been almost completely drained, a detail that perfectly matched the volume of blood found in the car. DNA analysis confirmed that the bloodstains in the vehicle belonged to Samantha. Additionally, the shoe print on the rear window matched Samantha's shoes, and the rose gold iPhone found in the car was hers. The forensic team also examined Nathaniel's fingernails and discovered traces of Samantha's DNA. Notably, the location where Samantha's body was found was just under 2 miles from Nathaniel's home, a remote area he knew intimately. This likely explains why Nathaniel chose to dispose of the victim there. Based on this circumstantial evidence, the prosecution charged Nathaniel with first-degree murder and kidnapping. Samantha's family argued that Nathaniel's actions were so brutal and posed such an unpredictable threat to society that they urged the court to deny him bail. The judge agreed, rejecting his request for release. Nathaniel Rowland was born in 1994 in South Carolina. Little is known about his childhood, except that he was a rebellious child. During high school, he served as the captain of his school's basketball team and was well liked by his coach. As an adult, Nathaniel frequently drove around the 5 Points area, often seeking to meet unfamiliar women. Without a stable job, he lived a reckless lifestyle and was regularly involved in illegal activities. In October 2018, 2 men in Colombia abducted a woman and robbed her home. Hours after the incident, police found Nathaniel in possession of the stolen items, indicating his direct or indirect involvement in the kidnapping. That case was still under investigation when, shockingly, Samantha's murder occurred. This pattern revealed Nathaniel to be a dangerous repeat offender. Yet, despite the mounting accusations from the police, Nathaniel steadfastly denied the charges, insisting he was innocent and had been wrongfully arrested. With no confession, the prosecution had no choice but to meticulously piece together all the circumstantial evidence to construct a complete picture of the crime. On July 20th, 2021, Nathaniel's trial officially began. The prosecution called a total of 31 witnesses, with the most pivotal testimony coming from Nathaniel's girlfriend, Maria. In fact, when the police approached her, Maria expressed a willingness to cooperate fully, determined to share everything she knew without holding back. Maria revealed that she and Nathaniel had known each other for a long time, but had only recently started dating. Nathaniel owned a black Chevrolet and often lingered around the 5 Points area. On the evening of March 28th, Nathaniel didn't come home. Maria texted him to ask where he was, but he didn't respond. It wasn't until around 7 a.m. on the 29th that she spotted his car parked nearby. In a rush to get to work, Maria didn't have time to confront him. She simply got into the car and asked him to drive her to her job. On the way, Maria noticed the back seat was covered in bloodstains. When she asked Nathaniel what had happened, he snapped at her, telling her to mind her own business. She also spotted a rose gold iPhone in the car, clearly belonging to a woman. When she questioned him about the phone's origins, Nathaniel claimed he had found it and planned to wipe its data before giving it to her. However, Maria, not being a fan of iPhones, declined the offer. Later that afternoon, when she returned from work, Maria noticed that the clothes Nathaniel had changed out of were also stained with blood. He had brought a large quantity of cleaning agents and bleach, meticulously scrubbing the car. Alarmed by her boyfriend's strange behavior, Maria pressed him for answers, but Nathaniel grew furious and pushed her away. Still, she managed to catch a glimpse of a double-bladed knife covered in blood inside the car. Later, when she saw news reports about Samantha's case, Maria was horrified but too afraid to contact the police. She lived in fear until the authorities reached out to her, at which point she felt a sense of relief and was ready to reveal everything. Based on Maria's testimony, the police searched the area around her home and discovered a double-bladed knife in a nearby trash bin. Forensic analysis confirmed that the knife's unique structure perfectly matched the wounds on the victim's body. Traces of blood on the blade were also identified as Samantha's, solidifying its role as the murder weapon. In the same trash bin, the police found blood-soaked clothing belonging to Nathaniel along with bed sheets, towels, and gloves, all drenched in Samantha's blood. These findings became critical evidence in the case against Nathaniel. Additionally, the police gathered further supporting evidence. Phone location data revealed that in the early hours of March 29th, both Nathaniel's and Samantha's phone signals left Colombia together, traveling along Highway 378 before stopping in New Zion, the location where Samantha's body was found. At 5:43 a.m. on March 29th, someone attempted to withdraw money from Samantha's Wells Fargo bank account 9 times. Surveillance footage from the ATM captured a man, his face concealed, trying to complete the transaction. He repeatedly entered incorrect PINs before giving up and leaving the scene. A witness also observed this incident. Based on the timing, it was determined that Samantha had already been killed by this point. Although the man's face wasn't clearly visible, his build and height strongly indicated that it was Nathaniel. Around 11 a.m. on March 29th, Nathaniel visited a second-hand store and attempted to sell Samantha's iPhone. When the employee unlocked the phone, they noticed the lock screen displayed a photo of a woman. When asked about the phone's origins, Nathaniel gave a vague, hesitant response, unable to provide a reasonable explanation. As a result, the employee refused to buy the phone, leaving it in Nathaniel's possession. With the evidence collected, it was almost certain that Nathaniel was the perpetrator. However, the trial did not proceed as smoothly as anticipated. Nathaniel's defense attorney argued that no DNA from Nathaniel was found under Samantha's fingernails, suggesting he couldn't be the killer. Theoretically, if Samantha had been attacked, she would have fought back fiercely, leaving traces of her assailant's DNA under her nails. The absence of such evidence, the defense claimed, proved Nathaniel's innocence. In response, the prosecution countered that if the attack was sudden and overwhelmingly violent, Samantha may not have had the chance to resist. Alternatively, she might have fought back, but only made contact with the assailant's clothing, leaving no DNA behind. Furthermore, an examination revealed that Samantha's nails had been trimmed within 1 to 2 days after her murder, a possible attempt by Nathaniel to erase evidence and cover his tracks. When this argument failed to gain traction, the defense called additional witnesses to support their client. Nathaniel's cousin testified that on the night of March 28, 2019, Nathaniel had been drinking heavily and slept through the night, leaving no opportunity to go out. Nathaniel's father also claimed that on the morning of March 29th, Nathaniel discovered his car keys were missing, only to later find them in a parking lot. When he opened the car door, he found it filled with bloodstains. The father suggested that someone else might have used Nathaniel's car to commit the crime, asserting his son's innocence. Nathaniel's family, friends, and high school basketball coach all tried to portray him as a good person, mischievous perhaps, but incapable of committing such a barbaric crime. However, these defenses couldn't sway the overwhelming evidence presented by the prosecution. On July 27, 2021, after just over an hour of deliberation, the jury unanimously found Nathaniel guilty of murder and kidnapping charges. In a final statement, Nathaniel's mother pleaded for leniency, insisting her son was a compassionate person incapable of such a crime. But the judge deemed Nathaniel's actions too cruel and abhorrent. He described the case as one of the most severe and savage murders he had ever encountered in his courtroom. As a result, no leniency was granted. Nathaniel was sentenced to life in prison, without the possibility of parole. Notably, throughout the trial, and even as the verdict was delivered, Nathaniel maintained a cold, unrepentant demeanor, a chilling display that sent shivers down the spines of those present. Although the perpetrator received a fitting sentence, Samantha's death left an indelible scar on her family. Her parents often broke down in tears, tormented by the thought of the over 100 wounds inflicted on their daughter's body. Reflecting on their daughter's passing, Samantha's parents identified a critical factor that contributed to this tragedy: ride-hailing apps. Had their daughter not entered the wrong car, the killer would never have had the opportunity to strike. Determined to prevent similar tragedies, they launched a campaign to raise awareness about safety when using ride-hailing services. They also established the What's My Name Foundation, which focuses on educating the public about ride-hailing safety, supporting charitable organizations, and providing college scholarships to select high school students. Samantha's parents collaborated with lawmakers to advocate for legislative reforms to enhance passenger safety and ride-hailing services. Thanks to their tireless efforts, in June 2019, South Carolina passed a ride-hailing safety law, named after Samantha, known as the Sammy Law. Under this law, ride-hailing vehicles are required to display clear signage on the front and rear of the car. Additionally, the rear side windows must feature information boards showing the driver's name, photo, and license plate number, making it easier for passengers to verify their ride. The law also imposes strict penalties on those impersonating ride-hailing drivers, with fines up to $500 and a maximum jail term of 30 days. Those who exploit ride-hailing services to commit crimes face fines of up to $1,000 and a maximum prison sentence of 2 years. Passengers are also encouraged to exercise caution before entering a vehicle. They are advised to ask the driver, "What's my name?" as only the legitimate driver would know the passenger's booking details. The What's My Name Foundation uses Samantha's nickname, Sammy, to remind people that this final verification step before getting into a car is crucial. Subsequently, the SAMI law was recognized by the state of New Jersey and gradually refined. By July 2020, the law passed the U.S. House of Representatives with unanimous support. Despite the challenges and obstacles in the legislative process, the SAMI law officially became federal law in 2023. Samantha's case is a horrific crime, showcasing the brutality and callousness of the perpetrator. While justice was served with Nathaniel's sentencing, the pain inflicted on the victim's family remains irreparable. The passage of the SAMI law marks a significant step forward in protecting passengers using ride-hailing services. But it also serves as a bitter reminder that such protective measures often come at the cost of irreplaceable loss. Case 3. Around 7 a.m. on January 13, 1995, at the University of Tennessee campus in Knoxville, a city in eastern Tennessee, USA, a janitor named Alan began his routine task of collecting trash across various areas of the school. The campus is quite expansive, so each worker is assigned a specific area to clean. That day, Alan was tasked with tidying up Tyson Park, a small wooded area near the university, home to an abandoned steam plant that had been deserted for years. When he learned of his assigned area, Alan felt a stroke of luck. The spot he was asked to clean was remote, with little foot traffic, meaning he wouldn't have to exert much effort. Whistling as he strolled leisurely, the man ventured deeper into the woods, unaware that in mere moments, he would witness a horrifying scene that would haunt him for the rest of his life. As he passed by the abandoned steam plant, Alan suddenly noticed streaks of red staining the ground. They formed a faint trail, leading straight into the nearby underbrush. A sense of unease welled up inside him, but curiosity urged him forward. Taking a deep breath, he slowly parted the grass to get a better look, and in that instant, his heart felt as though it might leap out of his chest. Before him lay a body that was no longer intact. At first, Alan thought it might be the remains of an animal torn apart by a predator. But upon closer inspection, he shuddered as he realized it was human. The victim was shirtless, her skin covered in countless deep cuts, as if sliced meticulously with a razor blade or a utility knife. At the center of her chest, a 5-pointed star had been carved deep into her flesh. The blood had dried, forming dark clotted patches that made the wounds appear even more grotesque. But what horrified Alan the most was the victim's head. It had been so brutally battered that it was nearly unrecognizable. In that moment, his entire body froze, his legs trembling as if they might give way beneath him. Overwhelmed with panic, he bolted out of the woods, his shaking hands fumbling to dial the police. Less than an hour later, the Knoxville City Police, along with the university's security team, arrived at the scene. Even for seasoned investigators who had witnessed countless murders, the sight of this victim left them stunned. A preliminary examination revealed that the victim had been attacked with extreme savagery. The cuts on her body were likely inflicted by a sharp object, such as a razor or utility knife. Her head had been repeatedly struck with a large rock, leaving it completely disfigured. No one could fathom the excruciating pain the young woman must have endured before her death. The police quickly cordoned off the crime scene and transported the victim to the forensic center for further examination. The crushed state of her head made on-site identification impossible. All they could determine was that the victim was a young woman. Given that the crime occurred so close to the university campus, authorities feared the news would spark panic among students, so they swiftly contained the area and controlled the flow of information. The university administration was equally concerned. With the killer still at large, could someone else become the next victim? If the perpetrator was a student, or if their target was students, the consequences could be catastrophic. For this reason, solving the case quickly became the top priority. The first task for the police was to identify the victim. Since the university campus typically saw little outside traffic, it was highly likely that the victim was a student enrolled there. To confirm this, the police reached out to faculty and staff, inquiring whether any students had recently gone missing. During the investigation, a staff member responsible for managing the dormitory entry and exit logs provided a crucial lead. According to this individual, among the students in the school's vocational training program, there was a 19-year-old girl named Colleen Slemmer. She had left the dorm the previous evening and had not returned since. Colleen Slemmer was born on September 20th, 1975. She lived with her mother, stepfather, and younger sister in Orange Park, Florida. In September 1994, unable to afford college tuition, Colleen decided to join a vocational training program offered by the U.S. Department of Labor. This program supported young people aged 16 to 24, providing free education and job training, with some facilities even offering housing. Through this opportunity, Colleen was able to study computer science, a field she was deeply passionate about. Notably, the vocational training program in Knoxville, where Colleen was enrolled, shut down just a few months after the murder took place. Upon receiving this information about Colleen, the police immediately checked the entry and exit logs for the evening of January 12th. The results revealed a striking anomaly. According to the records, Colleen had left the dorm with 3 other individuals, Krista, Tatterall, and Shadala. The 4 of them departed together at 8 p.m. By 10:15 p.m., the other 3 had returned, but Colleen had not. Where could a young woman like Colleen have gone at that hour? The more the police thought about it, the more they sensed something was terribly wrong. They decided to summon the 3 individuals who had been with Colleen that evening for questioning. However, before they could track them down, another significant lead emerged. A university security guard brought the police a leather jacket, explaining that it belonged to Krista, one of the 3 people who had been with Colleen the previous night. Krista had left the jacket behind, and, concerned it might be related to the case, the guard promptly turned it over to the authorities. When the police searched the jacket's pockets, what they found inside left them stunned. Wrapped in a tissue was a bone fragment, still stained with blood that hadn't fully dried. The forensic experts present immediately recognized something alarming. Based on their experience, they determined that the fragment closely resembled a piece of human skull tissue. However, they couldn't draw a definitive conclusion on the spot and needed to send the sample to the forensic center for a more precise analysis. Meanwhile, another female student from the vocational training program approached the police with a critical piece of information. That morning during class, Krista had suddenly pointed to the brown stains on her shoes and, with a smug grin, declared, "This isn't mud, it's blood." She then began to boast, describing in vivid detail how she had slit her rival's throat and used a rock to crush her skull. Hearing this, the police felt a chill run down their spines. They immediately recalled the young woman's body, savagely mutilated in the woods, and a horrifying question surfaced in their minds. Could it be that, after committing such a heinous act, this young woman felt no fear and instead took pride in flaunting her crime? With suspicion mounting, the investigative team began questioning the 3 individuals who had been with Colleen on the night of the murder. Krista and Shadala started to recount the details of what had happened, and piece by piece, the puzzle began to take shape. It all started when Krista decided to teach Colleen a lesson. Convinced that Colleen was trying to seduce her boyfriend, Tatterall, Krista had joined the vocational training program in 1994, where she met Tatterall, a 17-year-old teenager. The 2 quickly grew close, bonded by a shared and disturbing belief in Satanism. This religion was steeped in warped, sinister doctrines that rejected God, exalted cruelty over compassion, and involved rituals to summon demons, sometimes even performing human sacrifices. To most people, these practices were horrifying and deeply wrong, but for Krista and Tatterall, they were a thrilling obsession. Their shared darkness drew them together, and they soon became a couple. But their happiness didn't last long. When the holidays arrived, Krista had to return home, leaving Tatterall alone at the dorm. Unable to bear the loneliness, he began seeking a replacement, and his attention quickly turned to Colleen. Tatterall started approaching her, using every trick in the book to charm her. He believed that with his girlfriend away, no one would ever find out, but he was gravely mistaken. Women's intuition is often razor sharp. The moment Krista returned, she immediately sensed something off in the dynamic between Tatterall and Colleen. The chemistry between them was too obvious to conceal, no matter how hard they tried. Krista furiously confronted Tatterall, demanding to know if he had betrayed her. Naturally, he denied it vehemently. Colleen's friends also stepped in to defend her, insisting there was nothing between the 2 of them. But, despite all the denials, Krista trusted her instincts. She wasn't one to let things slide. From that moment on, Krista relentlessly tormented Colleen, using threatening words that left her living in constant fear. Colleen called her mother multiple times, desperately pleading to leave the vocational training program, but her mother refused. She insisted that Colleen finish her studies before even considering leaving. After a while, mere threats were no longer enough to satisfy Krista's rage. She wanted Colleen to pay a real price. So Krista turned to Shadala, a close friend in the vocational training group, and together they devised a plan for revenge. While plotting, Krista decided to involve her boyfriend, Tadderall, in the scheme. Since both were devout believers in Satanism, Krista exploited this to manipulate him. Playing the role of a mystic, she declared, "The universe has been out of balance. Without a sacrificial offering, the celestial order will collapse. We won't survive unless we offer up a soul." And the chosen sacrifice was none other than Colleen. To any rational person, such a statement would sound like absurd nonsense, but Tadderall believed it wholeheartedly. And so, the trio set their sinister claws on Colleen, sealing her tragic fate from that very moment. On the afternoon of Thursday, January 12, 1995, Krista reached out to Colleen. She put on a sincere facade, claiming she had been too impulsive in the past. To show her remorse, she invited Colleen to go shopping near the school, hoping to resolve their conflict and become friends. Colleen let out a sigh of relief. After all, Krista's constant harassment had left her incredibly stressed. Now, seeing the other girl take the initiative to make peace, Colleen happily agreed. Before heading out, Krista called her boyfriend Tadderall and Shadola to join them. She said the more the merrier. And so, around 8 p.m., the four of them left the dormitory together. On the way, Krista mentioned Tyson Park nearby. She explained that she, Tadderall, and Shadola often went there to smoke marijuana. Then she suggested, "Today we're putting our misunderstandings behind us. Why don't we head over there, share a joint, and celebrate?" The invitation immediately swayed Colleen. After all, Tyson Park was close to the school, just a short walk away. Plus, they were a group of four. Surely there was no danger. Without a hint of suspicion, she cheerfully accepted. But could Krista really forgive so easily? The answer was a resounding no. As soon as they left the dormitory, she had already hidden a utility knife and a butcher knife on her person. Throughout the walk, Krista was merely suppressing her emotions. Like a predator lurking in the bushes, she waited for her prey to fall into the trap. It wasn't until the group ventured deep into the woods, far from any crowded areas, that she revealed her true nature. Moments before, she had been laughing and chatting cheerfully. But in an instant, Krista spun around, facing Colleen with an icy glare. "Why did you try to seduce my boyfriend?" she demanded, leaving Colleen stunned and utterly confused. Colleen quickly reacted, shaking her head in her and Totoro. But her explanation didn't calm Krista. It only fueled her fury further. Rage erupting, Krista grabbed Colleen by the hair, yanked her down to her knee, and began attacking her in a frenzy. Colleen collapsed to the ground. Sharp pain coursed through her body, and she couldn't hold back her cries. It was then that she realized something was terribly wrong. Her voice trembling, Colleen sobbed, "Why are you doing this to me? I'll report this to the school." But Krista only sneered, unfazed. Instead of stopping, she delivered a brutal kick to Colleen's body, spewing a torrent of vile insults. Despite the relentless assault, Colleen struggled to her feet, summoning all her strength to flee. But she forgot there were two others present. Tadaro immediately lunged forward, pinning Colleen to the ground, while Shadola stood guard, watching for anyone who might pass by. At that moment, Krista pulled out the knife she had prepared, coldly striking down with such force that blood sprayed everywhere, staining Colleen's clothes crimson. Yet, she didn't stop there. With a sadistic gleam in her eyes, Krista continued to slash at her repeatedly. By now, Colleen could sense the true murderous intent. Overwhelmed with terror, she began to sob and beg, "Please spare me. I'll leave right away. I swear I'll never come back, and I won't tell anyone about this." But her pleas didn't soften Krista. They only heightened her excitement. Krista attacked Colleen with unhinged ferocity. The young woman's screams of agony echoed through the night, but no one was around to hear them. To silence her cries for help, Krista slashed a deep cut across Colleen's throat. Because the angle wasn't precise, she had to slice multiple times. Her survival instinct gave Colleen one final burst of strength. Clutching her throat, she broke free from Tadderall's grip and stumbled toward the park. But she didn't get far before a large rock came hurtling through the air, striking the back of her head with brutal force. This time, Colleen didn't even have the chance to scream. Her body crumpled to the cold ground. She no longer had the strength to fight back. All she could do was silently pray for survival. But Krista had no intention of stopping. Her excitement only grew. She called Tadderall over, handing him the butcher knife. For the next half hour, the two took turns torturing their victim. Hundreds of cuts were carved into Colleen's body, blood pouring in streams, soaking the ground beneath her. When Krista finally grew bored, she decided to end the torment. She carved a 5-pointed star into Colleen's chest, then lifted a large rock and brought it down on her head with force. Once, twice, over and over, until Colleen's face was completely unrecognizable. In occult beliefs, it's said that if a person dies with their body no longer intact, their soul cannot find peace and will remain trapped forever in the remnants of their flesh. For this reason, Krista chose a piece of Colleen's skull, her favorite part, as a keepsake, carefully placing it in the pocket of her leather jacket. She believed this would ensure Colleen's soul remained imprisoned, never to be freed. After the horrific crime was complete, the three perpetrators dragged Colleen's body into the nearby underbrush. Before leaving, they rifled through her belongings, taking her ID card and a pair of black gloves, which they later hid at a nearby gas station. By 10:15 p.m., the group returned to the school as if nothing had happened, calmly heading back to the dormitory and resuming their daily lives. None of them showed any signs of fear or remorse until the police came knocking the next day. In the interrogation room, Krista calmly caressed the 5-pointed star pendant around her neck, a symbol of the faith she revered. With a chilling composure, devoid of any guilt, she recounted the entire crime in meticulous detail, step by step. As the police documented her confession, the transcript spanned 46 pages. The officers present couldn't help but shudder. How could a young woman like her be so ruthless? What had turned her into a demon in human form? Regardless, her confession significantly streamlined the investigation process. The police sent the skull fragment found in Krista's jacket for forensic analysis, and the results confirmed it belonged to Colleen. Additionally, in Krista's dorm room, they discovered a satanic Bible and a pair of jeans covered in stains. DNA testing verified that the stains were Colleen's blood. With all the physical evidence and witness testimonies in place, the Knoxville police officially arrested Krista on charges of murder. A few hours later, Tatterall and Shadola were also taken into custody. On March 22, 1996, the trial for Colleen's murder officially began. Before the proceedings started, the jury emphasized in their opening statement that Krista's actions were not only cruel, but also cowardly and barbaric to the extreme. The prosecutor then presented key evidence, charging Krista and her accomplices. With the chain of evidence indisputable, after just a few hours of deliberation, Krista was found guilty and sentenced to death for first-degree murder. At the time, Tennessee still used the electric chair for executions. This made Krista the youngest woman on death row since the U.S. reinstated the death penalty in 1976. She was only 18 when she committed the crime. The moment she heard the death sentence, Krista seemed to crumble, breaking down in tears with an expression of regret and fear. But no matter how many tears she shed, no one felt any sympathy for her. A cold-blooded killer like her didn't deserve compassion. Meanwhile, the trial for her accomplices was held 3 months later. After the trial, Krista was transferred to Tennessee's highest security women's prison to await execution. During her incarceration, she couldn't restrain herself and wrote a letter to her boyfriend, Tatterall. However, the letter was intercepted by a guard and handed over to the prosecutor. Its contents revealed that Krista felt no remorse. She even believed the police should be grateful to her for not letting Colleen suffer any longer. On June 6, 1996, Krista was sentenced to an additional 25 years in prison for conspiracy to commit murder. While this sentence held little significance for someone already on death row, it further underscored the horrific nature of her crimes. As for Tatterall, because he was only 17 at the time of the murder, he received a life sentence, but with the possibility of parole in 2028. Shadola, who was an accomplice complicit in covering up the crime, but cooperated fully with the police after her arrest, was sentenced to 460 days in prison and 6 years of probation. One might think the case ended there, but the story was far from over. In 1997, a man named Eric Holler sought to sell exclusive items related to Krista on his website. He reached out to her via letter. Coincidentally, Krista loved to boast about her achievements, and the two quickly hit it off. Soon after, items linked to Krista began appearing on the market. Handwritten letters, strands of her hair, signed photos, and even her underwear were put up for sale. A signed photo of Krista, accompanied by a letter and a lock of her hair, could fetch $135. Other items were quickly listed as sold, nearly selling out. Krista and Eric even planned to get married. Eric's thinking was simple. He believed Krista would eventually be executed, and when that happened, everything she owned would become his property. But he miscalculated. Krista remains alive to this day, while Eric himself is the one running out of time. Recently, his website announced that he had been diagnosed with cancer, and the site would cease operations indefinitely. In 1999, a video featuring Krista was released. In it, she said, "I'm 22 years old now, and I still have so much I want to do. But every day I'm locked in a solitary room for 23 hours. I should be out there, going to school, working, and hanging out with friends. I really love my stuffed dog, Eddie. It's the only stuffed toy I'm allowed to keep because they're afraid I might hide dangerous objects in other ones." If you think Krista had reformed, think again. On August 24, 2001, two inmates at the prison, Natasha Cornett and Patricia Jones, got into a conflict. Krista suddenly intervened, wrapping a shoelace around Patricia's neck in an attempt to strangle her. Fortunately, guards arrived just in time to stop her. When questioned by the police, Krista shrugged nonchalantly and said, "I was just helping Natasha. But if Patricia had died, I wouldn't have lost any sleep over it. I don't really care." 6 days after the attack on Patricia, Krista had a phone call with her mother. During the conversation, she said, "I bet if I had one more chance, I'd definitely succeed. Or if I'd had just 30 more seconds back then, that girl would have been gone from this world." Clearly, Krista regretted not being able to finish Patricia off. From then on, other inmates steered clear of Krista. She was placed in solitary confinement in a cell measuring just 113 square feet, allowed only 1 hour outside each day. For her, freedom had become a distant dream. The attack on Patricia Jones led to Krista being convicted of yet another charge, attempted first-degree murder. Even so, this new sentence had little impact on her predetermined fate. Krista's lawyer once attempted to appeal, hoping to have her death sentence commuted to life imprisonment. The reasoning for the appeal was almost laughable. They argued that a life sentence would help her realize her mistakes more than a death sentence would. But ironically, Krista seemed so fed up with her prison life that she rejected the appeal and even requested immediate execution. She said, "Because no one's going to take me out of prison to go play at Disney." The judge, who had never heard such a bizarre request in his career, agreed and set her execution date for August 19, 2002. Krista repeatedly expressed her gratitude, saying, "Thank you. It's okay, Mom." In 2008, Krista filed for a retrial. During the hearing, as she listened to a recording of her 1995 confession, she couldn't hold back her tears. But those tears changed nothing. Her request for a retrial was once again denied. In 2012, no one knows how Krista managed to convince a 34-year-old man named Donald Kohut, who had been corresponding with her for over a year, to willingly help her escape from prison. Donald bribed a 23-year-old guard named Justin Heflin, paying him to create a spare key to unlock the prison doors. However, the plan was exposed before it could even take off, thanks to a tip-off. On May 31, 2012, Donald was charged with bribery and conspiracy to escape, receiving a 7-year prison sentence. The guard, Justin, cooperated with the police and testified in court, avoiding jail time but losing his job at the prison. As for Krista, since there was no direct evidence proving her involvement in the escape plan, she emerged unscathed. Afterward, unwilling to face execution, Krista filed a complaint with the state's Human Rights Commission, claiming she had long suffered from severe mental illness that wasn't properly considered during her trial, resulting in an unfair verdict. Upon receiving her complaint, the Human Rights Commission immediately sent experts to conduct a psychiatric evaluation of Krista. The results were surprising. She was indeed suffering from a mental disorder. Investigative reports revealed that her condition was closely tied to a deeply traumatic past. Krista Gale Pike was born on March 10, 1976, in Beckley, West Virginia, USA. Her father was utterly irresponsible, frequently abusing his during her early years, before abandoning both mother and child just 3 years after Krista's birth. But compared to her father, Krista's mother, Carissa, was even worse. Carissa was a nurse but a severe alcoholic. Even while pregnant, she was constantly intoxicated, causing significant underdevelopment in Krista's frontal lobe. The frontal lobe governs behavioral control and decision-making, and damage to this area increases the risk of bipolar disorder. As a result, Krista suffered from epilepsy from birth. After being abandoned by her husband, Carissa fell into depression and attempted self-harm, but failed. Instead of seeking to rebuild her life, she unleashed her resentment on her daughter through brutal beatings and relentless torment. Carissa then cycled through a series of lovers. To her, personal gain trumped everything. Parties, alcohol, and men always took precedence over her daughter. Krista was little more than a disposable object in her mother's eyes. Once, when Krista was just learning to walk, she suffered a sudden epileptic seizure and had to be rushed to the hospital. Her grandmother called Carissa for help, but at the time, Carissa was out on a date at a bar and didn't bother to check on her daughter. When Krista was 8 years old, her mother's fourth boyfriend, who disliked children, prompted Carissa to send Krista to live with her grandfather. Krista's grandfather owned a slaughterhouse and raised numerous animals. She grew fond of them, but eventually, they were all slaughtered right before her eyes. This left a lasting psychological scar on Krista. At 12 years old, the only person who had ever shown Krista warmth, her grandmother, passed away. From that point on, Krista lost the will to live. After a failed attempt to end her life, she began suffering from memory loss and schizophrenia. At 15, Krista was assaulted by a neighbor. She filed a lawsuit, but her mother refused to believe she was a victim and withdrew the case. In her mother's eyes, Krista was a delinquent child. Carissa once saw her daughter holding a knife to a boyfriend's throat, unaware that those men had been secretly abusing her. The repeated injustices drove Krista to contemplate ending her life multiple times. At 16, while walking down the street, Krista was dragged into the mountains by a stranger and attacked. After being taken to the hospital for examination, the results confirmed she had been assaulted, yet her mother still refused to pursue legal action. Dismissing the incident is unimportant. From that moment, Krista completely lost all trust and hope in her mother. In September 1994, Krista's mother decided to send her to a vocational training program. In Carissa's mind, once her daughter had a trade, she could sever ties completely. It was in this cold, unloving family environment that Krista grew increasingly radicalized, ultimately stepping onto the path of crime. Given Krista's unique circumstances, the Human Rights Commission conducted a final evaluation and review. Time passed, and on August 27, 2020, the Tennessee State Court submitted a request to the U.S. Supreme Court to set an execution date for Krista. However, due to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, the process was delayed. Krista continued to appeal for a reduced sentence, but the court denied her request. She then cited a case involving juveniles, arguing she should receive similar leniency. However, the Tennessee Supreme Court affirmed that she was 18 at the time of the crime, an adult under the law, and rejected her request for a retrial. Currently, Krista is the only female inmate in Tennessee facing the death penalty. If her sentence is carried out, she will become the first woman executed in the state in over 200 years. Krista has also set up a website to plead for clemency. She claims she deserves a chance at forgiveness, expressing remorse for what happened that night and a desire to turn back time to right her wrongs. She emphasizes that the person she is today is no longer the same as she was over 25 years ago. Public opinion on the matter is deeply divided. Some argue that the traumatic events of Krista's childhood profoundly impacted her mental state. At the time, medical knowledge was limited, and her condition went undetected and unaddressed. Serious mental health issues may have impaired her ability to control her actions during the crime. For these reasons, some express sympathy and believe Krista should not be executed. However, many others firmly believe the death penalty is necessary. Colleen's family has been waiting for Krista's execution for years. A member of the grieving family stated, "I have to fight for Colleen. I am her voice. I want to see the person who murdered her executed, not continuing to live in prison, receiving education, and being supported by our tax dollars." But that wish may never come to fruition. The governor of Tennessee has decided to indefinitely postpone signing the execution order. Unless something changes, Krista may spend the rest of her life behind bars. Additionally, a fragment of Colleen's skull, considered a key piece of evidence, remains in the court's possession. Colleen's mother has repeatedly requested its return, but her pleas have been denied. Feeling helpless, she built a memorial for her daughter in her backyard. Case 4. Miami, located on the Florida peninsula along Biscayne Bay, is the second largest city in Florida. With its endless stretches of white sandy beaches, a mild and pleasant climate, and stunning coastal scenery, it's no wonder this city has become one of the world's most renowned vacation destinations. At the same time, Miami serves as a vital gateway connecting North and South America, boasting a highly developed network of maritime, air, and road transportation. Each year, millions of international tourists flock here, while many immigrants also choose Miami as their new home to settle and build a life. The story we're about to explore took place right here. Sergio Pino was a prominent figure in Miami's business circles, as well as a respected philanthropist who frequently appeared in the public eye. He had a family that many envied, owning an $8 million mansion and a yacht of equal value. The real estate company he ran, Century Home Builders, was the largest developer of homes for the Hispanic community in the United States, cementing his status as a quintessential billionaire. Born on September 9, 1956 in Havana, Cuba, Sergio came from a modest family. Sergio's parents had 2 children, and he was the eldest. His younger brother was named Carlos Pino. Their father ran a small grocery store, but in 1968, the Cuban government confiscated the shop, stripping the family of their sole source of income. Plunged into despair, Sergio's parents made the difficult decision to leave Cuba for the United States, taking their 2 sons, Sergio, then just 12 years old, and Carlos with them. Given Cuba's proximity to Florida and the special immigration policies of that era, many Cubans sought every possible means to migrate to the U.S. The Pino family was no exception, joining the wave of immigrants heading to Miami, Florida. Sergio's father found work as a plumber's assistant, while his mother took on cleaning jobs. As a child, alongside his studies, Sergio worked part-time, taking a job cleaning carpets for a plumbing company. Though his part-time work consumed much of his time, it didn't hinder his academic performance. Sergio was both intelligent and diligent, working with his hands while his mind never stopped learning. He refused to let anything stand in the way of his education. After graduating high school with his sharp mind, Sergio realized that the plumbing business wasn't overly complicated and believed he could strike out on his own. As the saying goes, fortune favors the bold, and Sergio took a leap of faith, borrowing $6,000 from his father to start his own plumbing company, Century Plumbing. But reality proved far harsher than he'd imagined. While the company secured a few contracts, Sergio soon faced numerous challenges due to a lack of expertise and manpower. Yet, instead of giving up, these obstacles only fueled his determination. In the years that followed, Sergio and his family remained deeply involved in the plumbing and construction industries, slowly turning the small company into a success. During this time, Sergio got married and had 2 children. However, in 1985, his marriage hit a rough patch, ultimately ending in divorce. As the saying goes, when love falters, career prospers. And this seemed to hold true for Sergio. Over the next 2 years, his business flourished dramatically. But the greatest surprise came one fateful day when he walked into a small shop, and there, he met Tatiana Linares, a woman 12 years his junior. Tatiana was born in 1968 into an ordinary family in Cuba. From a young age, she was strikingly beautiful, so much so that neighbors often praised her as a natural beauty. Like many Cubans, her parents dreamed of a better life in America. So when she was still a child, they left their homeland for the United States, settling in the nearby state of Florida. To make a living, her parents opened a small shop, where Tatiana often helped out after school. By her teenage years, she had long, jet-black hair and a captivating beauty that turned heads. At 17, a chance visitor came to the shop, none other than Sergio. From the moment he laid eyes on her, Sergio was utterly captivated by Tatiana's beauty. Despite their significant age gap and her parents' disapproval, Sergio's persistent pursuit eventually won her over. In the years that followed, Sergio and Tatiana traveled together to iconic landmarks across the United States, their bond growing ever stronger. After nearly 5 years of dating in 1992, they finally tied the knot. Their wedding was a lavish affair, attended by around 600 guests, most of whom were Sergio's friends. This was hardly surprising, as by then, Sergio had become a successful businessman in Florida with a personal fortune of $15 million, while Tatiana's family came from a modest background, resulting in fewer guests from her side. Yet, from the radiant smiles on their faces, it was clear that both were brimming with hope and happiness as they looked toward their future. They truly loved each other. Tatiana believed she had married for love, and Sergio treated her with great care. After their marriage, they stood by each other's side, supporting one another through thick and thin, and welcomed 2 daughters into the world. Alongside their growing family, their business ventures flourished. In 1995, at the age of 39, armed with years of hard-earned experience in the business world, Sergio recognized the boundless potential of the U.S. construction market. He decided to establish a new company, Century Residential Construction, officially entering the construction industry. Based in Florida, his company focused on developing and building residential and commercial projects, committed to delivering innovative, high-quality housing solutions. There's no denying that Sergio had a visionary eye. His company grew rapidly, expanding its reach with each passing year. To date, they have built over 16,000 homes. Florida is home to a significant population of Hispanic immigrants. According to the 2020 census, about 26.1% of the state's population is of Hispanic descent, making them one of the largest communities there. As a result, the majority of Sergio's clients were Hispanic Americans. Sergio's rags-to-riches story, from starting with nothing to achieving immense success, inspired countless young dreamers. On paper, he had risen from humble beginnings to become a thriving entrepreneur with a beautiful wife who loved and supported him unconditionally. With a flourishing career and a loving marriage, he was the epitome of what many aspired to be. His life should have been filled with happiness. But the reality of wealthy families often reveals a different story. Marriages among the elite can be just as chaotic, if not more so, than those of ordinary families. In 2017, 25 years after their wedding, a scene straight out of a movie unfolded. Tatiana stumbled upon a devastating truth. She had been betrayed. Her husband, Sergio, was having an affair with a young, attractive real estate agent. For her, this revelation was like a bolt from the blue. It's worth noting that she had met Sergio at 17, fallen in love with him, and built a life together over the years. By 2010, Sergio's company, Century Residential Construction, had become the largest home construction contractor for the Hispanic community in the U.S. He went on to earn prestigious accolades, including top 100 leading businesses in Miami, top 100 construction contractors, and largest Hispanic-owned business. Not stopping at construction, Sergio ventured into banking, becoming a founding member and vice chairman of Century Bank of America. He was also appointed to the Florida Transportation Commission and held key roles in various investment funds, as well as on the board of trustees at Florida International University. Alongside his soaring career, Sergio's quality of life continued to improve. He owned several luxurious villas in Coral Gables, including a primary residence valued at $8 million. Behind the estate ran a river, where a yacht, also worth $8 million, was docked. Sergio and his wife Tatiana were active philanthropists, frequently donating to cancer research organizations, supporting patients, contributing to Florida International University, and funding the construction of public buildings and parks. These efforts earned them a reputation as prominent local philanthropists. For 25 years of marriage, Tatiana had devoted herself entirely to supporting her husband's career, managing their household, and raising their 2 daughters with unwavering dedication. Yet, in return for her wholehearted commitment and unconditional love, she was met with cruel betrayal. Still, Tatiana wanted to give her husband a chance. She believed Sergio still loved her, and thought of their 2 daughters and the once happy home they had built. If Sergio genuinely repented and ended his illicit relationship, she was willing to forgive everything. Sergio immediately promised to cut all ties with the real estate agent, but his words were empty. While he appeared remorseful on the surface, behind Tatiana's back, he continued his affair in secret. Not only that, but other young, beautiful women began to appear in his life as well. To conceal his actions, Sergio was meticulous, covering his tracks with cunning precision. On the surface, his marriage to Tatiana seemed to return to normal, but in reality, an invisible crack had formed, one that nothing could mend. Over the next 2 years, Sergio maintained the facade of a devoted husband and father, while his business empire continued to thrive. But for Tatiana, things were far from smooth. She began experiencing health issues, frequently in and out of the hospital. At first, she suffered from dizziness and nausea, but later, she developed more severe symptoms, difficulty breathing, hair loss, and even episodes of unconsciousness. Though she recovered after each prolonged treatment and rest, doctors couldn't pinpoint the exact cause. Eventually, they diagnosed her with epilepsy and cardiovascular issues. In July 2019, Tatiana felt nauseous again, noticing a strange taste in her mouth. Tests at the hospital suggested she might have consumed contaminated food. By November 22nd, after a full recovery, Tatiana attended a dinner event for influential women in Miami. The gathering included 30 prominent women, among them the Lieutenant Governor of Florida, U.S. senators, congresswomen, and other powerful figures. Guests typically brought small gifts, and Tatiana brought a dish of Brussels sprout salad. The atmosphere that evening was lively, with everyone chatting and enjoying a relaxed time. But not long after, an unexpected incident occurred. Several attendees began feeling dizzy, nauseous, and started vomiting. The situation escalated quickly, prompting an immediate call for ambulances. Over 10 people with symptoms were rushed to the hospital. After examination, doctors confirmed the cause as food poisoning. Fortunately, after a night of treatment, their condition stabilized, and they recovered. Given that the affected individuals were all high-profile figures, the police took the incident seriously and launched an investigation. According to the attendees' accounts, all clues pointed to the Brussels sprout salad Tatiana had brought. Nearly everyone who experienced symptoms had eaten the dish, while those who hadn't were completely fine. What stood out was that the salad wasn't prepared by Tatiana herself. It had been made by her husband, Sergio, for her to eat. Unknowingly, she had brought it to the event. This led many to suspect that Sergio had deliberately poisoned the dish with the intent to harm Tatiana. However, this remained a theory. After forensic analysis of the salad, which had been almost entirely consumed, the police found no traces of poison. Moreover, Sergio adamantly denied all accusations. In the end, the investigation hit a dead end and was left unresolved. Over the next 2 years, Tatiana continued to fall ill frequently. Each time, she managed to call for help and receive treatment in time, narrowly escaping danger. Records show that during this period, she called for an ambulance over 35 times and was transferred between multiple hospitals. Despite undergoing countless tests and even having a pacemaker implanted, her condition couldn't be fully cured. In February 2022, Tatiana fell ill again. This time, her condition was more severe than ever. She collapsed to her body turning purple, struggling to breathe. Her daughter found her and rushed her to the hospital. Thankfully, Tatiana was saved. Determined to uncover the root of her persistent illness, Tatiana and her daughter sought treatment at various hospitals. This time, they finally achieved a breakthrough. Doctors at Johns Hopkins Hospital, after analyzing her blood samples, detected the presence of fentanyl, a powerful opioid painkiller 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine. When misused or improperly administered, it can be life-threatening. Those poisoned by fentanyl often experience difficulty breathing, irregular heartbeats, and organ failure, all symptoms that matched Tatiana's. Upon receiving the test results, Tatiana immediately reported the matter to the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, as she had never used this drug herself. It was clear someone had been secretly poisoning her. And if you've been paying attention, you've likely already guessed who was behind it, none other than her own husband, Sergio. Tatiana had come to the same realization. So the first thing she did after being discharged was to move out of their shared home. Coincidentally, after leaving Sergio, her health improved dramatically, with no further relapses. This only strengthened her suspicions. Around the same time, her sister Aurora revealed that she had seen Sergio still meeting with the agent. This left Tatiana utterly devastated. At last, she understood everything. All this time, she had been living in a delusional love story, one-sided from her end. Reflecting on the years of constant illness, a chill ran down her spine as fear surged within her. She resolved to end it all. In April 2022, Tatiana officially filed for divorce and demanded half of Sergio's assets. At the time, Sergio's total wealth was estimated at around $153 million. Furious at her request, Sergio adamantly refused. According to him, everything he owned, his wealth and career, was the result of his own hard work, and his wife had contributed nothing. Furthermore, he emphasized that when they married in 1992, they had signed a detailed prenuptial agreement, stipulating that his personal assets belonged solely to him, and Tatiana had waived her right to alimony after a divorce. In short, he agreed to the divorce, but would only offer a maximum of $20 million. While $20 million is no small sum, it paled in comparison to Sergio's hundreds of millions in assets. Naturally, Tatiana refused. Thus, the two entered a prolonged legal battle over the division of assets post-divorce. At first, Tatiana thought this was just a typical divorce case among the wealthy, primarily a dispute over who would get more money. But she could never have imagined how far money could drive a person to madness and cruelty. On July 2nd, 2022, 3 months after Tatiana filed for divorce, the nightmare truly began. At 3:26 a.m., a fire broke out at the home of Aurora, Teshiana's sister, in Dade County. Two vehicles, a Chevrolet and a Dodge Ram, were completely engulfed in flames. Surveillance footage captured a man in a hoodie sneaking into the yard at night, dousing the cars with gasoline. After setting them ablaze, the man fled the scene. Aurora immediately suspected Sergio was behind the incident. After all, she had no enemies, and the only person she had ever clashed with was Sergio, because she staunchly supported her sister's divorce and had personally witnessed Sergio with other women, informing Teshiana of his infidelity. Sergio was the only one with a motive. However, due to the poor quality of the surveillance footage that night and the man's deliberate effort to conceal his face, the police couldn't identify the suspect. In the early hours of August 12, 2023, at 3:34 a.m., another man stealthily entered Aurora's yard, carrying a can of gasoline, and set fire to her remaining car. But, just like the previous incident, the police were unable to apprehend the culprit. On August 30th, shortly after attending a divorce hearing, Teshiana returned to her new home in Pinecrest, a suburb of Miami. As she pulled into her driveway at 4:12 p.m., a small pickup truck, which had been waiting nearby, suddenly started its engine and barreled straight toward her. It seemed the driver wasn't skilled, as the collision wasn't forceful enough to be life-threatening, allowing Teshiana to narrowly escape harm. After the incident, she called Sergio to ask if he was involved. Sergio feigned innocence, claiming he knew nothing about it. He even insisted he was a victim himself. His BMW had been torched, his house had been shot at, and he had received threatening calls pressuring him to finalize the divorce quickly. Teshiana felt nothing but frustration hearing this. Deep down, she was convinced these were all orchestrated ploys by Sergio to force her into signing the divorce papers. But she had no idea that even more horrifying events were yet to come. On June 23, 2024, as Teshiana drove home from a church ceremony, she was unaware that an armed man was lying in wait in her yard. Spotting her car approaching, the man, wielding a gun, rushed out to block her path. In a panic, Teshiana blared her horn frantically, while flooring the gas pedal to swerve into the backyard. She didn't care if her car scraped against trees or the fence. Her only focus was escaping danger. The gunman gave chase but couldn't keep up. He then circled to the front of the house, attempting to cut off her vehicle. At that moment, Teshiana's 26-year-old daughter was inside the house. Hearing the incessant honking outside, she rushed out to check and came face to face with the armed man. He pressed the gun to her head, but didn't pull the trigger, instead ordering her to go back inside and stay out of it. Clearly, his target wasn't the girl. Terrified, she ran back into the house and called 911 to report the incident. In the frantic call, she told the police that the attacker was targeting her mother, and her mother's life was in danger. Fortunately, after failing to carry out his plan, the man quickly fled, and Teshiana narrowly escaped death once again. Notably, the very next day was another scheduled divorce hearing, making the motive behind the attack glaringly obvious. The following day, the Federal Bureau of Investigation (FBI) conducted a surprise raid on Sergio's luxurious mansion in Coral Gables, seizing his phone, computer, and other electronic devices. Yet, despite the unexpected investigation, Sergio didn't seem the least bit surprised. This indirectly suggested he may have been aware of everything, and was likely the mastermind behind it all. When questioned by the police, he adamantly denied any involvement, insisting he had never intended to harm his wife. With insufficient concrete evidence, and given Sergio's influential status, the police couldn't take immediate action against him. The police continued investigating the earlier arson incidents, the car accident, and the armed attack. Eventually, they arrested 8 suspects, including a man named Bevins, a professional criminal with a prior record. Bevins had previously served time for attempted murder and armed robbery. Though he wasn't the one who broke into Teshiana's home, he was linked to the shooting incident. Initially, he refused to cooperate, but as the police tightened their grip, he realized there was no escape. To reduce his sentence, he agreed to work with the authorities. He revealed that he had been recruited by a man named Viller, someone he had met in prison, and the person giving orders to Viller was very likely Sergio himself. To assist the police, Bevins deliberately called Viller to elicit a confession. Based on this crucial lead, the police quickly obtained an arrest warrant. At 6 a.m. on July 16, 2024, dozens of FBI agents and SWAT officers mobilized, deploying armored vehicles to Sergio's opulent mansion. The operation was meticulously planned. One team of officers secured the yacht behind the house to prevent Sergio from escaping by water, while another team positioned themselves at the front, using a loudspeaker to demand his surrender. Every 15 minutes, the police fired a flashbang grenade to apply pressure, but despite hours of standoff, the mansion's front door remained shut, and Sergio never appeared. Around 10 a.m., with the situation still at a deadlock, a single gunshot echoed from inside the house. The FBI immediately sensed something was terribly wrong. Unsure if anyone else was inside, they swiftly broke through a window to enter. After a thorough sweep, the police found Sergio collapsed on the bedroom floor, a gun still in his hand, showing no signs of life. It's hard to imagine that a 67-year-old billionaire, who once dominated Florida's business scene, would end his life this way. But even with Sergio's death, the investigation didn't stop. In total, the police arrested 9 suspects linked to the case. All 9 were charged with the attempted murder of Tatiana. If convicted, they could face up to life in prison. In the subsequent investigation, as expected, the mastermind behind the plot was none other than Sergio. Bevins told the FBI that Sergio's motive was to avoid the divorce and the loss of half his fortune. Tatiana had refused the $20 million settlement he offered, so after his poisoning attempts failed, he devised an even more sinister plan. The federal prosecutor for the Southern District of Florida, after compiling all the evidence, stated, based on Tatiana's numerous hospitalizations over the years, the police believe she was poisoned multiple times. Miraculously, she survived each attempt. However, after moving out, the situation didn't de-escalate. Sergio only grew more unhinged. He first turned to Bennett, a worker on his yacht, instructing him to stalk, threaten, and continue poisoning his wife to force her into accepting the divorce terms. Eventually, he even ordered her elimination. Bennett hired 3 accomplices, initially planning to use poison, but for some reason, they abandoned that approach. They then resorted to arson and staged a car accident, but all attempts failed. To cover his tracks and mislead the police, Sergio orchestrated the burning of his own car on September 7, 2023, ordered a shooting at his own home, and provided false statements to investigators. Under intense police pursuit, Bennett and 4 accomplices were arrested one by one. When the assassination attempts failed, Sergio recruited another group, this time turning to Viller. Viller, a notorious criminal, immediately sought out Bevins after taking the job, asking him to recruit more accomplices. Viller relayed orders to Bevins multiple times, with the final instruction being to eliminate Tatiana before June 24, 2024, to ensure she couldn't attend the next divorce hearing. Sergio paid Bevins a total of $75,000 in 2 installments. In reality, he had spent $150,000 on the 2 groups of hitmen he hired, promising an additional $150,000 if the job was completed successfully. According to the police's final confirmation, Tatiana had narrowly escaped death at least 9 times. She was utterly terrified after everything she had endured, while her sister, Aurora, was both shocked and in disbelief at Sergio's actions. Throughout the ordeal, Sergio had been extremely cautious. He communicated with his accomplices only through messages, never using his personal phone, and all payments were made in cash to avoid leaving a transaction trail. As a result, aside from Bennett and Viller, who were directly involved, the police couldn't find clear evidence against him, but that no longer mattered. His death brought everything to a close, making his crimes vanish like smoke. He was never formally charged, meaning that, in the eyes of the law, he was never a criminal. Since Sergio died while still legally married to Tatiana, in theory, his entire estate would pass to her and their children. However, the inheritance process was far from smooth. Sergio, a calculating man, had prepared a backup plan after his repeated attempts to eliminate his wife failed. He transferred a portion of the company's assets to his brother, Carlos. He also drafted a will stating that, if he died, all his assets would go to Carlos. Moreover, he secretly transferred Tatiana's shares in the company without her knowledge. This was a cunning move, as a will typically holds the highest legal authority. If everything went according to the will, Tatiana would be left with almost nothing. But this would only happen if the will was deemed legally valid. On August 9, 2024, at a Miami court, Tatiana's lawyer played a trump card, arguing that Sergio suffered from severe paranoia and mental health issues, rendering his will invalid and the prior asset transfers illegal. Although the lawyer couldn't provide conclusive evidence, given Sergio's history of plotting to kill his wife, The judge agreed with the argument and temporarily blocked Carlos from inheriting the estate. Tatiana also revealed that the prenuptial agreement she signed with Sergio in 1992 was coerced. The document spanned dozens of pages, and she was unaware of its full contents. At the time, Sergio had told her, "If you don't sign this agreement, the wedding tomorrow will be cancelled." To avoid worrying her family and friends, she felt forced to sign. If this were true, the prenuptial agreement would hold no legal weight. However, what the circumstances were back then, no one can say for certain now. Sergio's true wealth has always been a topic of public fascination. Since Tatiana also held shares in the company, combined with premarital assets, marital assets, trust funds, insurance, real estate, and the yacht, determining an exact value is incredibly complex. Some sources estimate that in 2024, his total estate was worth over $300 million, while other records listed at $153 million. Whether it's over $100 million or over $300 million, it's still an astronomical sum that most people can't even fathom. As of now, the fate of this fortune remains undecided. However, barring any surprises, the majority of the estate is likely to be inherited by Tatiana and her children. Currently, Tatiana has officially taken over Century Residential Construction Group, becoming the company's acting female CEO. Reflecting on this tragedy, Sergio built his empire from nothing, turning it into a powerhouse. He was an incredibly intelligent man with a sharp business mind. Yet, when faced with the prospect of divorce, his actions were extreme and irrationally perplexing. Clearly, he was the one who erred first, by cheating, and should have anticipated the consequences of asset division in a divorce. Moreover, even if the divorce had proceeded peacefully under Florida law, combined with his premarital assets, he would have retained over 50% of the total estate, remaining a billionaire. There's no denying that Sergio had an intense desire to control his wealth. This extreme need for control propelled him to success in business, but it also stripped him of his humanity and rationality, ultimately leading to a downfall where he lost both his life and his fortune. Case 5. In 2019, a young man with long, flowing hair and a distinctly hippie vibe approached Musk. The moment he opened his mouth, he dropped a bombshell that left everyone in the room stunned. "I hear you're planning to send humans to Mars. Let me handle the entire infrastructure for that project. I'll build houses on Mars for you." Not only that, but the young man confidently presented a detailed plan, complete with a projected budget of a staggering $1 trillion. Musk's initial instinct was to throw this madman out of the room. "Do you think I'm a fool? $1 trillion? Why don't you just fly straight into the sky yourself?" he retorted. But then he paused, caught off guard, because the man standing before him was, quite literally, there to discuss flying into the sky. Still, Musk restrained his emotions. After all, this wasn't just some nobody. The man was the CEO of a tech company valued even higher than Musk's own SpaceX. So who is this enigmatic figure? Let's take a step back and look at the landscape of top-valued private companies in 2018. Names like Airbnb, Stripe, and Elon Musk's SpaceX were among the leaders. But towering above them all with a valuation of $50 billion was WeWork, a startup focused on shared workspaces. And the man bold enough to pitch a $1 trillion deal to Musk was none other than Adam Neumann, the founder and CEO of WeWork. Despite its lofty valuation, in Musk's eyes, WeWork held no real technological value. To him, it was nothing more than a real estate brokerage masquerading as a tech company, plain and simple. The notion struck him as utterly laughable. Yet, to many investors at the time, Adam Neumann was a visionary entrepreneur, a daring dreamer who wasn't afraid to act on his ambitions. To WeWork's employees, he was a savior, a leader with a grand mission to change the world. To his family and friends, Adam Neumann was like 24-karat gold, wealthy, talented, and fiercely loyal to his wife. Unlike Musk or Jeff Bezos, billionaires who, after amassing their fortunes, quickly divorced their wives to pursue new lives, Adam Neumann was the epitome of a devoted husband. He not only met his wife's every demand without question, but even when she betrayed him, leading to a loss of 90% of his wealth, Adam harbored no resentment and never abandoned her. Though Adam Neumann remains a polarizing figure, one thing is undeniable. His imagination and audacity deserve recognition. Under the dazzling lights of New York, a city often likened to the pinnacle of the capitalist pyramid, Adam Neumann single-handedly set out to build a people's commune in the heart of this opulent metropolis. The driving force behind his audacious journey stemmed from a cryptic question posed by billionaire Masayoshi Son during their very first meeting. In a battle between a madman and a wise man, who would win? Rumor has it that if you answered correctly, Masayoshi Son would bestow upon you his golden finger, a metaphorical gesture symbolizing the immense backing of SoftBank, propelling you to the heights of success. So what was Adam's answer, and what was the correct response? First, let's rewind to 2002, when Adam was just 23 years old. With only $6,000 in his pocket, but a heart full of ambition, he arrived in New York alone, determined to chase his dreams. This wasn't his first time in the city, however. Adam Newman was born into a Jewish family in Israel. His childhood took a sharp turn when his parents divorced at the age of 7. His mother, taking her 2 children, left their homeland for the United States to pursue her career as a medical resident. But life in a foreign land was far from easy. Adam struggled with dyslexia and a limited grasp of English, turning his education into a nightmare. He was bullied by his peers, his grades plummeted, and the situation became so dire that his mother decided to take the family back to Israel to start anew. While the move brought emotional stability, their financial situation remained precarious. The family of 3 relied on women's and children's support centers, surviving on free meals provided by social welfare programs. But life has a way of surprising us. Back in a familiar environment, Adam's linguistic abilities seemed to awaken. Not only did he master Hebrew, Israel's official language, but he also became fluent in English, the very language that had once been his greatest obstacle in America. He even began competing in bilingual debate tournaments, winning numerous awards. From a shy, struggling child, Adam transformed into a master communicator. After graduating high school, like all young Israelis, Adam enlisted in the military, serving for 5 years and leaving with the rank of captain. With a military stipend in hand, he returned to New York, enrolling at Baruch College to study business. This time, Adam felt more confident than ever, convinced he would make it big in this city of endless opportunities. But reality dealt him a harsh blow. After graduating, he bounced from job to job, even trying his luck on Wall Street. But he could never hold a position for more than a few months. His supervisors often remarked, "He talks a good game, but his skills can't keep up with his ambitions." Frustrated, Adam decided that if he couldn't succeed working for others, he would start his own business. He teamed up with his college friend and roommate, Miguel McKelvey, to launch a children's clothing company called Crawlers. Their flagship product was a special pair of pants for infants, designed with padded knee protectors to help babies crawl comfortably. The irony, however, was that neither of these 2 young men had any experience as parents, yet they chose to venture into the baby clothing market. Predictably, the market taught them a brutal lesson. Their design was utterly unremarkable, and the oversized knee pads looked more like turtle shells than anything practical. To make matters worse, their advertising slogan lacked any real punch. Babies crawl around, their knees hurt, but they can't say it. Don't worry, we've got them covered. Parents, on the other hand, had a different perspective. A pair of baby pants costing $50 to $60? We're not sure if the baby's knees hurt, but our wallets definitely will. And so this first entrepreneurial endeavor quickly hit a dead end. Broke and defeated, the 2 climbed to the rooftop of their rented apartment, cracked open a couple of beers, and began lamenting their lives. After downing a few cans, Miguel started reminiscing about his childhood, growing up in a small town in Oregon, a place often considered a cradle of hippie culture. He never knew his biological father, only that he was raised by 5 women. That unconventional family, despite its quirks, gave him the happiest days of his life. They all lived under one roof, with no concept of personal property. Everything was shared. The money they earned went into a tin box, and anyone who needed it could take what they required. They ate together, slept together, and raised the children collectively, much like an idealized communist community. Listening to Miguel's story, Adam felt a wave of nostalgia. When he first graduated, he had dreamed of making enough money to buy a house and build an empire. But looking back, his happiest moments were the carefree days spent crammed in a dorm with friends, chatting, and playing games late into the night. Then, a spark ignited in Adam's mind. Who says those happy days can't come back? We can absolutely tweak the concept, blending a communal model into a work environment, making it both fun and profitable. Inspired by the shared bike model, he came up with the concept of a shared office space. In a single building, different companies could work in a communal area, supporting each other while efficiently utilizing resources. The ground floor would feature a bar, a Starbucks, and all the amenities one could need, essentially a mini residential community. In short, Adam wanted to pull people out of the digital world and back into face-to-face interactions, creating a modern working community. After this grandiose brainstorming session, a gust of night air swept through, sobering them up as the alcohol wore off. They suddenly realized the idea was great, but where would the money come from? Having just failed in their last business venture, they were barely scraping by for food. How could they possibly fund a new startup? A few days later, Adam approached their landlord. With his silver tongue, he managed to convince the landlord to lease them an entire floor on an installment plan. Alongside this, the duo scrambled to secure a small bank loan, which they used to buy desks, chairs, a fax machine, a printer, and other basic supplies. And so Green Desk, literally the Green Desk, was born. At the time, the United States was just emerging from the financial crisis. Those who had endured unemployment and struggled to find work had lost faith in large corporations, turning instead to entrepreneurship. However, these microbusinesses often lacked the funds to afford expensive office spaces in New York. It was at this precise moment that Adam's Green Desk seized the advantage with its pricing model. Not only did they offer monthly leases, but they also provided even shorter-term options, down to just a few weeks. Adam took flexibility a step further by renting out individual desks. For just $50 a month, clients could secure a spot in a professional office building, complete with the prestige needed to meet clients and host meetings. Beyond that, they enjoyed perks like free coffee and an in-house bar. For startups, this was nothing short of paradise. Thanks to this model, within a short time, the entire building was fully occupied, allowing Adam and Miguel to earn their first profits as middlemen leasing office space. Riding this wave of success, they even roped their landlord into a partnership, expanding to more shared office buildings in the surrounding area. Everything went so smoothly that Adam began to dream bigger, conquering Manhattan, the bustling epicenter of New York, to truly make a name for himself. Without hesitation, Adam and Miguel sold Green Desk to their landlord for $500,000. With that capital, they founded a new company with a far more grandiose name, WeWork. To make a strong impression on investors, Adam boldly inflated the company's valuation, a classic hype tactic in the startup world. It was at this pivotal moment that Adam met the second big wallet of his life, his future wife, Rebecca Paltrow. Interestingly, the actress who played Pepper Potts in Iron Man, Gwyneth Paltrow, is her cousin. Born into a wealthy Jewish family, Rebecca had lived a life of luxury from a young age. Watching her cousin shine in Hollywood, she too once dreamed of becoming an actress. However, her unremarkable looks and lackluster acting skills relegated her to minor background roles for years. Despite her struggles in the entertainment industry, Rebecca never had to worry about money. She studied business in college but found it uninspiring, switching midway to Buddhist studies. After graduating, her family arranged a job for her on Wall Street, hoping she'd gain experience before taking over the family business. But just 3 weeks into the role, Rebecca declared she was too exhausted and quit. In the end, she settled for a temporary gig as a yoga instructor at a fitness center. It was at a party that she met Adam. Upon realizing Rebecca was a true baifu-mei, a Chinese term for a wealthy fair-skinned beauty, Adam launched into a relentless pursuit. Not long after, the two were planning their wedding. To win over this heiress, Adam knew he had to polish his image to perfection. When founding WeWork, he didn't hesitate to hype the company's value to an astronomical figure. That inflated valuation was like a glittering layer of gold wrapped around the company. But Rebecca's father, a seasoned businessman with years of experience, saw right through the ploy. Still, his beloved daughter was determined to marry Adam, so he kept his thoughts to himself, offering only a knowing smile. Not only that, but on their wedding day, he generously gifted the young couple a lavish dowry, $1 million in cash. Marrying into a wealthy family, Adam truly reached the pinnacle of his life. With his father-in-law's backing, WeWork rapidly expanded across New York, securing one contract after another and growing at a breathtaking pace. In return for this support, Adam tirelessly helped his wife chase her acting dreams. But perhaps Rebecca was never meant for the entertainment world. After repeated failures, she reluctantly gave up her aspirations of stardom, settling into the role of a full-time homemaker. Still, she didn't shy away from embracing the life of a wealthy socialite, eventually giving Adam 6 children. as an heiress born with a silver spoon. Rebecca was determined that her children would enjoy the same luxurious upbringing she had. Each child was to have 2 personal nannies, grow up with their own private villa, and most importantly, achieve financial independence from the moment they were born. With 12 nannies, 6 villas, and trust funds worth millions of dollars for each child, even a billionaire like Bill Gates might have raised an eyebrow at such demands. But Adam, utterly devoted to his wife, agreed without a second thought. In fact, he went further, declaring, "We can't wait until the kids are grown to buy houses. We need to start now." Easier said than done. Where would the money come from? While WeWork was doing well, the shared office model lacked any significant technological barriers to entry. It didn't take long for it to become flooded with imitators. These copycat companies couldn't match WeWork's amenities or brand, but they offered a compelling advantage. Much lower rental prices. For cash-strapped startups, choosing a workspace that cost a few $100s less per month was an obvious consideration. As WeWork expanded its market share to 30%, the company began to hit a wall. Fierce competition eroded profits, and losses started piling up at an alarming rate. Investors, growing increasingly impatient, repeatedly threatened to pull their funding. During one heated argument with an investor, Adam overheard a frustrated outburst. "Do you think everyone is as rich as SoftBank?" The mention of SoftBank immediately caught Adam's attention. He opened his laptop and began searching. The first name that popped up was Masayoshi Son, the Japanese investment mogul. After reading about the billionaire's string of spectacularly successful deals, Adam had an epiphany. This was the golden goose he needed to pursue. Without wasting a moment, Adam booked a flight to India, where Masayoshi Son was attending a conference. On the plane, he immersed himself in research about the billionaire he was about to meet. Masayoshi Son, a man of Korean descent raised in Japan, had faced significant discrimination due to his background. Seizing on this, Adam cleverly leveraged his own childhood story. A Jewish child growing up between the United States and Israel, constantly navigating 2 vastly different cultures to make an impression on Masayoshi. He recounted his tale with such raw emotion that even he found himself on the verge of tears. But Masayoshi Son remained unmoved. As a veteran in the investment world, he heard countless startup pitches every day, ranging from tragic to legendary, from heartwarming to thrilling, spanning every genre imaginable. But he wasn't a philanthropist. He was a businessman, and his sole goal was to make money. After years in the cutthroat world of finance, he had forged a heart of steel, impervious to even the most dazzling stories. Yet this time, seeing a young man who had chased him halfway across the globe for a chance, Masayoshi maintained his courtesy and posed a single question. In a battle between a madman and a wise man, who would win? Adam paused for a few seconds, then answered with unwavering conviction, the madman. As he spoke, his eyes blazed with fiery passion. For a fleeting moment, Masayoshi Son seemed to freeze. That look, that fire, he had seen it before. Many years ago, another young man had carried the same intensity in his gaze. Back then, that young man was a penniless entrepreneur with nothing to his name. But with that same resolute look, he had convinced Masayoshi to invest $20 million in his company. 20 years later, that investment had ballooned to $150 billion, a staggering 7,500-fold return. That young man was none other than Jack Ma. The memory stirred something in Masayoshi Son. Could it be that the young man standing before him now was the next Jack Ma? For months later, Masayoshi Son flew to New York to see WeWork for himself. What he encountered was a company brimming with vitality. The workspace was spacious and airy, with every detail exuding sophistication. The pantry area was bright and tidy, and the entire office was designed in the Japanese wabi-sabi style, simple yet elegant. But what impressed him most wasn't the decor, it was the people. Here, there were no weary employees dragging themselves through endless overtime. Instead, everyone radiated energy, laughing and chatting with enthusiasm. At WeWork, Mondays were the happiest day of the week, and overtime was seen as a reward. This vibrant atmosphere perfectly aligned with Masayoshi Son's taste. When Adam rushed out to greet him, still fumbling to put on his shoes properly, his hurried and passionate demeanor suddenly reminded Masayoshi Son of his younger self. In that moment, the deal felt destined. Masayoshi Son patted Adam on the shoulder and uttered a life-changing statement for WeWork: "Money isn't an issue. From now on, your godfather will take care of you." He then pulled out a contract. SoftBank would officially invest in WeWork, starting with an initial sum of $460 million. With SoftBank's backing, Adam became unstoppable, like a tiger sprouting wings. Over the next 2 years, he aggressively acquired and crushed competitors in the industry, boosting WeWork's market share from 30% to 95%, eventually reaching a complete 100% monopoly in New York. At the same time, he expanded globally, establishing a presence in over 100 countries. WeWork office buildings sprang up in some of the world's most expensive real estate markets: Hong Kong, Taiwan, Shanghai, and beyond. In just a few years, Adam transformed from an unknown into a business legend, standing shoulder to shoulder with the likes of Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg. Money poured in like a river, and Adam began to indulge. Private jets, supercars, gold-plated mansions, every item he owned reeked of wealth. But Adam wasn't the only one reveling in this opulence. His wife, Rebecca, was no less extravagant. She didn't settle for the typical purchases of a wealthy socialite, like designer bags or glittering jewelry. Instead, she decided to buy entire companies. In the past, she had dreamed of being an actress, but never landed a role. So now she bought an entire theater. If the gym near their home was too crowded, no problem. Adam would buy a building and turn it into a private fitness center just for her. When their children's education suffered due to constant travel, and teachers complained, that wasn't an issue either. She simply opened a school, and if the new school struggled to hire quality teachers, the solution was straightforward: buy a teacher training center. Inspired by the WeWork name, Rebecca went on to create a series of We brands: We Fit, a chain of fitness centers; We Grow, a school for the next generation; We Sleep, a project focused on bedroom furniture to improve sleep quality; and even We Eat, a chain of vegan restaurants. Had WeChat not already been trademarked, she might have bought that app too. Yet, no matter how many companies she launched, the public still saw Rebecca as merely Adam's wife. Unwilling to accept this, she demanded a position on WeWork's leadership team, a role nearly equivalent to CEO. Remarkably, Adam, who worshipped his wife to the heavens, not only agreed, but created a brand new title just for her: Chief Brand and Impact Officer. However, once in this role, Rebecca didn't focus on strategy or company growth. Instead, she introduced a bizarre rule. She banned all employees from eating meat. A staunch vegan, she believed meat brought negative energy, disrupting the company's chi. From the office cafeteria to employees' personal lunch boxes, not a trace of meat was allowed. Every lunchtime, Rebecca would stride through the office like a queen on a royal inspection, leading a team of enforcers to check for violations. If someone dared to sneak a piece of meat or a sausage, they were immediately ordered to pack up and go home. A second offense meant instant termination. The employees, no matter how frustrated, had to grit their teeth and endure. Adam had painted a rosy picture for them. The day WeWork went public, long-term employees would receive shares. This wasn't just any company. It was valued at hundreds of billions of dollars. Even a small slice of that pie could change their lives forever. The most anxious party wasn't the employees, but WeWork's godfather, SoftBank, and its leader, Masayoshi Son. Initially, he had invested $460 million into WeWork, but Adam kept finding ways to extract more funds. By the time the total investment reached tens of billions of dollars, Masayoshi Son began to feel uneasy. What was even more alarming was that WeWork had never turned a profit. A company burning through billions of dollars without generating a single cent of profit. How could that be acceptable? As the tech investment bubble began to burst, even SoftBank faced financial difficulties. At this point, Masayoshi Son could no longer pour endless money into Adam's venture. He demanded that Adam seek funding from another group of investors, such as the oil tycoons from Abu Dhabi. If Masayoshi Son was Adam's godfather, these Arab billionaires were his grandfathers. But for reasons unknown, Adam managed to offend even these deep-pocketed patrons. At a crucial meeting, he brazenly stood them up. A group of billionaires waited patiently for 40 minutes, but Adam was nowhere to be seen. His arrogance infuriated them, and they promptly boarded their private jets, flying straight back to the Middle East. Realizing he had caused a disaster, Adam frantically called Masayoshi Son, claiming his assistant had mixed up the schedule due to time zone differences, and pleaded for his godfather to help mend the relationship. But this time, Masayoshi Son had run out of patience. He gave his unruly godson a stern lecture before hanging up. As a businessman, you can't even manage something as basic as being on time. You've embarrassed me enough. From now on, SoftBank's money will no longer flow into WeWork's pockets. Figure it out yourself. Left with no other choice, Adam was forced to accelerate plans for an IPO, initial public offering. After all, WeWork was a high-profile brand, and several Wall Street giants immediately expressed interest. JP Morgan Chase even offered a valuation of $490 billion, willing to support Adam, provided everything was transparent. But when the auditors stepped in, they were stunned by what they uncovered. Not only was WeWork hemorrhaging tens of millions of dollars each month, but Adam and Rebecca had been secretly siphoning off company funds for years. For example, they had quietly registered all the We brand names, like WeGrow, WeFit, and WeSleep under their personal names, then forced the company to pay over $5 million to buy them back from themselves. That wasn't all. They also played a game of buying real estate under their personal names, only to lease it back to WeWork. In other words, the company, which appeared to be in the business of renting spaces, was actually renting from its own CEO, Adam. All the investments in projects like the school, vegan restaurants, and gyms were made in the company's name. But in reality, the money flowed straight into Adam and Rebecca's pockets. It was a classic money from the left pocket to the right pocket scheme, with Rebecca skimming off a hefty chunk each time the funds moved. At this point, people realized the We in WeWork was nothing but a sham. Flip it around, and it was simply me, as in me alone. When the truth came to light, JP Morgan Chase backed out, shaking their heads in disbelief. If Adam wanted to proceed with the IPO, there was only one option: drastically lower the company's valuation. The figure they proposed was $37 billion. From $490 billion to $37 billion, this plummeting drop was nothing short of cutting off Adam's legs. Under the pressure of avoiding bankruptcy, Adam had no choice but to push forward with the IPO preparations, hoping to find another big player with pockets as deep as SoftBank's. But at this critical moment, his fear of his wife flared up again. For a document as crucial as the IPO filing, Adam entrusted the task to his wife, Rebecca, to write on his behalf. The problem was, what qualifications did Rebecca have beyond her prestigious family name? She had spent a few months in a monastery during college, interned on Wall Street for less than 3 weeks, and her writing skills were, to put it mildly, questionable. The result was an IPO filing that read more like a fantastical speech, filled with lofty rhetoric about entrepreneurship and WeWork's promising future. She didn't just talk about world peace and the abolition of class divides. She emphasized equality for all of humanity, sounding more like an endless sermon on morality. Not only that, Rebecca shoehorned her school project into the IPO portfolio, claiming it would unlock the hidden superpowers of children. And to top it all off, she boldly declared herself as WeWork's successor. Her husband's business, she decided, would become a family enterprise, with her holding the reins indefinitely. Investors reading the IPO filing couldn't believe their eyes. No one could fathom how a couple could be so reckless, or produce such an absurd financial document. It might have been entertaining to read, but no one was willing to invest in it. And with that, the dream of an IPO went up in smoke. As WeWork descended into chaos, someone finally stepped up to fight back. Miguel McKelvey, the co-founder who had long been relegated to the background by Adam. Quiet and unassuming, Miguel had spent years playing second fiddle, letting Adam take the spotlight. But after reading the IPO filing, he could no longer hold back his outrage. What the hell is this? Since when did his wife become a company founder, and she wants to pass the throne to herself? Does she think I don't even exist? Furious, Miguel decided to take action. He reached out to the Wall Street Journal and exposed every scandal he had witnessed firsthand. What Adam and Rebecca had done went far beyond mere embezzlement. They had evaded taxes, laundered money, and shockingly, Adam was heavily addicted to clover, a slang term for marijuana. Even more alarming, evidence surfaced that Adam had once planned to use a private jet to smuggle a large quantity of illegal substances into Israel. This series of revelations detonated like a nuclear bomb, sending WeWork's reputation into a freefall. The company's board of directors immediately convened an emergency meeting, and with an overwhelming vote, they decided Adam had to go. But ousting Adam couldn't save the sinking ship. At this point, WeWork was like a terminal cancer patient. Removing the primary tumor did little when the cancer had already metastasized beyond repair. To make matters worse, even after being removed as CEO, Adam still held 60% of the company's shares. With no other options, Miguel turned to the only person who might be able to salvage the situation, Masayoshi Son. He pleaded with SoftBank to buy out Adam's shares, hoping to perform a major surgery to save the company. After some deliberation, Masayoshi Son finally agreed to step in once more. After all, he had already poured tens of billions of dollars into WeWork. Letting it collapse would not only mean a massive financial loss, but also a direct blow to his reputation as the world's top investor. So SoftBank injected an additional $1.7 billion, officially taking ownership of WeWork. And so, after burning through tens of billions of other people's money, Adam and Rebecca not only succeeded in destroying the company, but also walked away with billions in their pockets, retiring early to enjoy a life of luxury with their enormous fortune. The ones who suffered the most, aside from the large and small investors, were WeWork's employees. For years, Adam had paid them below-market wages, dangling the promise of stock options once the company went public. That carrot on a stick had kept them loyal. But now, with the IPO dream shattered, their hopes of striking it rich vanished too. Worse still, the company didn't even have enough money to pay severance packages. The employees couldn't leave, nor did they have any choice but to continue working for meager salaries, clinging to the faint hope that a miracle might occur as the company reinvented itself. But before we rush to condemn the ruthless nature of capitalism or cry foul over the injustice, this story has one more unexpected twist. The one to deliver a form of divine justice this time was none other than the coronavirus. In 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic turned remote work into the dominant trend, effectively sounding the death knell for the shared office industry. Citing a severe drop in the company's value, SoftBank immediately canceled the remaining $1.7 billion payment they had promised Adam. No one could have imagined that a financial titan like Masayoshi Son would so blatantly renege on a deal. Furious at losing his golden prize, Adam sued Masayoshi Son, while former WeWork employees also filed lawsuits against Adam for low wages and labor law violations. Not to be outdone, SoftBank turned around and accused Adam and Rebecca of financial fraud, claiming they had deceived the firm. What followed was a chaotic legal battle, with lawsuits flying back and forth, each party refusing to back down. These legal disputes are expected to drag on for years, possibly even a decade. And until the dust settles, Adam's billionaire dreams may remain just that, a distant fantasy. Let's circle back to Masayoshi Son's original question. In a battle between a madman and a wise man, who would win? It turns out this was a trick question. The real answer is the stronger one wins. Because no matter how smart or crazy you are, if you're up against someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger, you'd have no choice but to submit. And in the game of capitalism, the one with the most money always comes out on top.